Esma. London, April 1978. I closed the door and took a deep breath. It had become a habit lately, these midnight escapes. I locked myself in the bathroom after everyone went to sleep. I lit a candle, watching my face change with every flicker of the flame. I was not interested in observing the 15-year-old that I was. Instead, I wanted to find out what was beneath the surface, connect with that other self I had yet to discover. Most of the girls I knew had their own bedrooms and could keep their doors closed as they pleased. Not me. If I were to lock the door of the room I shared with my younger brother, my family would fear something terrible had happened to me. That is why I loved the bathroom, the only place where I could be alone with my thoughts and my body. I took off my sweater and the flesh-colored bra I hated with a vengeance. My breasts were pointy, with thin, blue veins, which I found repulsive. 2 burdens to carry, as if I didn't have enough already. Just this morning, one of the boys in my class had attempted to touch them, pretending to get a book from a shelf behind me. Noticing his intentions, I was able to dodge him at the last minute. Right away, I heard a group of boys snigger. They had planned this together. They had talked about it. About my breasts. I felt sick. Outside, the rain was falling on Lavender Grove. As I looked from the window back to the mirror, I wondered, for the umpteenth time, what I would look like had I been born a boy instead. Grabbing a nut brown eye pencil, I first thickened, then joined my eyebrows. Next, I began to draw a mustache above my lips. Not a thin, wispy bristle, but a big, bushy thing, curling over upwards. If Iskender saw me now, he would have shaken his head and said, "Sis, you're off your trolley." At times I felt like the odd one out, as if there had been a mistake in the celestial records that had caused me to end up here. In this setting, I was struggling with being a top rack while my true destiny awaited me elsewhere. "Hello, this is my sister. She only likes losers," Iskender said whenever he introduced me to someone, especially to a boy. It never failed. The boy would then stay away from me. Not that I cared. Strange as it sounded when Iskender put it like that, he had a point. I found myself fatally drawn to the downtrodden, to the underdog. Even when I watched a football match, I so wanted the score to be a draw that I ended up supporting the losing team. The thought of how terrible the players must be feeling at that moment, crushed under the weight of their fans' disappointment and woe, was enough for my heart to go out to them. "You side with snails." "That's the problem," Mum said. She believed there were 2 types of people in this world, the frog allies and the snail allies. In the village where Mum had lived as a girl, the children used to catch frogs from a nearby stream. One day they captured the largest frog anyone had ever set eyes on. Someone brought a bowl from home and turned it over all day long. Kids came and tapped on the glass, leaning closer to see the frog better, excited and disgusted by its bulging eyes and scabby skin. Then one of the boys produced a snail out of his pocket and placed it under the overturned bowl. The frog immediately forgot about its distress, concentrating on its prey. In the meantime, the snail was inching its way along, hoping to break free of its prison, unaware of the danger. The frog leaped once, then twice, and caught the snail. Under the eyes of a dozen screaming kids, the frog ate the snail, a sticky, gluey slime oozing out of its mouth. My mother said that day all the children had backed the frog, clapping, cheering. But if you had been there, I bet you would have sided with the snail. Sometimes I worry about you. It was fine with me to be in the snail's camp, as long as I didn't have to keep up with those who lived at high speed, like some of the girls in my class. Our school was polarized. There were those like me, the swats, who ranged from ugly to ordinary at best, worked towards their O-levels and never got much attention save from the teachers. Then there were the slags. They couldn't care less about their classes and were so eager for their life to start that they didn't see the need to waste another minute on their education. The prettiest among them were the Barbies. I would observe the Barbies, study their ways, as if dissecting a new species in biology class. They talked about nothing but boys, sharing meticulous information about which bloke fancied which girl. They kept detailed records of who went out with whom, curious as to whether they had done it yet, and, if so, how many times, and whether the bulge in so-and-so's belly was because she was pregnant, and whether she would have the baby or put it up for adoption. They constantly fell in and out of love, romantically and frantically, experiencing every single day as an emotional roller coaster that left longing in their eyes and juicy gossip on their tongues. Their favorite pastime was shopping en masse. At times their mothers or elder sisters took them to department stores to buy lingerie, while the former tried to convince them to get sports bras. They chose lacy ones, sexy and dainty. The next day at school they showed them to each other in the loo, peppering their conversation with exclamations. If something was good, it was brill or ace, otherwise, it was rubbish. The same terms were applied to food, clothes, teachers, parents, even countries and world affairs. The Barbies occasionally complained about their periods to their close and not so close friends, to their boyfriends, to their mothers, and some to their fathers, the thought of which was enough to make me flinch. I wondered, and it was almost a scientific inquiry, how these things could differ so much from one culture to another, let alone from one household to another. If I had spoken about my periods to my mother, she would have turned red with shame. Then she would have lectured me with words borrowed from Grandma Nays. Would things have been otherwise had I attended the local school with other neighborhood children? If the names of my classmates had been Aisha, Farah or Zineb, instead of Tracy, Debbie or Claire, would I have fitted in more easily? Perhaps, but I didn't think so. I knew it looked pathetic, but the truth was I preferred doing homework or reading a good book to hanging around with my peers. Still, I was proud of my achievement, thanks to my primary school teacher, Mrs. Powell. Poor woman. The gossip was that her only son had been excluded from school and had moved out of the family home, she knew not where. In her distress, Mrs. Powell had dedicated herself to helping children from disadvantaged backgrounds find their feet. I was one of them. Pleased with my mustache, I set out to draw a goatee on my chin. Yes, it was Mrs. Powell who had come to our house and talked to my parents, convincing them to send me to a better school. Not a private school, but a grammar. After years of experience, I can recognize a special child from miles away. In my professional opinion, Mr. and Mrs. Toprak, your daughter, is able and talented. Mrs. Powell had also spoken to the governors of the new school, predominantly white, Christian, English, middle class, and whatever it was she had told them, it worked. Though a snail by heart, I had made a frog's leap. I wanted to be a writer, but not a female one. I had even decided on my pen name, John Blake Ono, an amalgam that consisted of the names of my 3 favorite personalities, a poet, a writer and a performance artist, John Keats, William Blake and Yoko Ono. I often wondered why female names were so different from male names. More whimsical and dreamlike, as if women were unreal, a figment of one's imagination. Male names embodied power, ability and authority, like Muzaffar, the victorious one, Farik, one who distinguishes truth from falsehood, or Husam al-Din, the sword of faith. Female names, however, reflected a delicate daintiness, like a porcelain vase. With names such as Nilufer, lotus flower, or Gulcerin, spreading roses, or Binaz, a thousand blandishments, women were decorations for this world, pretty trimmings on the side, but not too essential. J. B. Oh no. A name for booksellers to mention in reverent tones. A bit mysterious and surely androgynous. A name in no need of a bra. Asterisk. Having finished painting the goatee, I inspected my face. It was no use. Even when disguised as a man, I was not much to look at. If only I had my father's slimness and my mother's eyes, green, large and slightly slanted. Instead I had all the wrong features combined, including my mother's short neck and my father's ordinary eyes. My nose was bulbous, my hair so curly it refused to be brushed down, and my forehead too wide. I had a mole on my chin, an ugly brown bump. Many times I had asked Mum to take me to a doctor to have it removed, but it was one of those things she never paid attention to. She was a beautiful woman, everyone said so. And my brothers were good-looking. It was unfair that in between the two sons, the beauty gene had gone on holiday, skipping me. Eunice had an angelic face, although the glow of childhood was beginning to wear off. Iskender, too, was handsome, but in a different way. His was the sort of appeal that was smoldering and mean, dirty gorgeous, as the Barbies would say. I was aware that a number of my classmates fancied my dishy brother and that they had befriended me only for that reason. Iskender sometimes came to pick me up from school, sending tough guy glances left and right that, to my wonderment, always worked. Wouldn't say no to that. The girls whispered. He looks so like Michael Corleone in The Godfather. All he needs is a gun. When was the last time you had an eye examination? I grumbled, unable to see any resemblance between Iskender and Al Pacino. But even if they heard the sarcasm in my voice, they didn't pay any attention to me. They found my brother irresistibly masculine. Since our father had moved out, Iskender had changed a lot, full of himself, crabby, peevish, always hanging with his mates, and that needy girlfriend of his, hitting his punch bag day and night, as if the world was teeming with invisible enemies. If this was what they called teenage angst, I didn't think I wanted to grow up. We had been very close, me and my mother, but all that changed the moment my breasts started to bud and I had my first period. The only thing she was interested in now was my virginity. She was always preaching about the things I should never ever not even in my wildest dreams do. Not once had she told me about what was possible and permissible. Her powers of communication were reserved solely for rules and prohibitions. My mother warned me about boys, saying they were after one thing and one thing only. At this age most boys were selfish and pushy, and many would never grow out of it. Yet she didn't impose the same rules on my brothers. Eunice was still too little, perhaps, but with Iskender she was totally different, open. Iskender didn't need to be careful. He could just be himself. No holds barred. What Mum didn't understand was that I was not the least bit interested in boys. I found them boring, shallow, hormonal. Had she not talked about the subject day and night, I wouldn't have given sex a second thought. After all, snails were hermaphrodites, having both female and male reproductive organs. Why couldn't human beings be like that? If only God had modeled us on snails, there would be less heartbreak and agony in this world. Heart of Glass. A place near the river Euphrates, April 1978. The patient in the bed was burning up. Jamila checked his temperature by putting her lips to his forehead, the way she did with babies. She laid a gentle hand on his wrist, taking his pulse. It was both weak and rapid. Heartbeats were like drums heard from afar, like sounds of war. The human body was a mystery. It loved to fight. Though most people didn't realize this. The body was a warrior, and far more resilient than the soul. But, like all great warriors, it had an unexpected weakness. It was frightened of the unknown. It needed to understand its enemy so as to be able to resist, strike, deter and pulverize it. If it didn't recognize what it was fighting against, it couldn't prevail. That was where Jamila came in. Since time had begun, healers like her helped patients to regain their strength so that they could get to know their illness. She didn't cure them so much as enable them to cure themselves. As she soaked a towel in distilled vinegar and placed it upon the smuggler's forehead, Jamila couldn't help but wonder, with the briefest of hesitations, what kind of a man she was nursing. There was no question in her mind that everyone deserved to live, but did everyone deserve to be brought back from death? It was a dilemma she contemplated every so often, arriving at no definitive conclusion. Were human beings born virtuous, and then grow to be corrupt? Or were they furnished with the seeds of vice even at the time of their conception? The Quran said we were all created from a clot of blood. How much of our present selves had been implanted in that droplet, Jamila wanted to know. A pearl, though pure and perfect, grew out of a speck of dirt that had penetrated the oyster shell by coincidence, if indeed there was such a thing. Even a bad seed could change into something exquisite. Yet there were also times when a smidgen of evil generated only more of the same. Some of the babies she had brought into this world would turn into swindlers, liars, thieves, rapists, even killers. If she possessed a way to predict how each and every child would develop, would she choose not to deliver some of them? Could she leave an infant in his mother's womb, comfortably entombed, so as to prevent him from bringing woe and misery into the world? Each time she took a newborn into her arms, Jamila admired its little toes, the rosebud mouth, the button nose, and felt confident that nothing but good could come from a creature this perfect. But every now and then she also sensed that some babies were different. Right from the beginning. Not necessarily more insensitive or spiteful, but different. The mothers, too, might have detected this, had their intuition not been screened by a curtain of love. Not her, though. Jamila could see things. She just didn't know what to do with them afterwards. Hard though it was to believe, there had been midwives who had killed the babies they had brought into this world. That was how the story of Abraham went, the story Jamila and Pem had heard from their father. One sunny day Berzo had taken his 8 daughters to visit a consecrated pool in Urfa. Nays was about to give birth again, despite her age, and the family had gone there to pray for a son. The clouds were buffeting across the vast, generous sky. People were everywhere, a soft murmur of voices, like the faint rustling of leaves. Overwhelmed by everything they saw, the girls huddled together, timid but thrilled. They fed the fish. On the way back there, Father had told them the legend behind the place. Berzo was a different man. On that day, his eyes not yet hard, his smile genuine. It was before everything had gone terribly wrong. King Nimrod was a man of endless ambitions and cruelties. One day, his chief stargazer informed him that when a boy named Abraham was born, his reign would come to an end. Not ready to let go of the throne, Nimrod ordered all the midwives in his empire to murder every newborn boy. Rich or poor, there would be no exceptions. Thus the midwives set to work. They first helped mothers to deliver babies, and if they turned out to be boys, then and there, they would strangle them. But Abraham's mother managed to escape the brutality. She gave birth on her own, in a cave in the mountains. Dark, damp but otherwise safe. When Abraham came of age, he stood up against the cruelty of Nimrod. The patriarch was infuriated. He instructed everyone, old and young, to gather driftwood for a bonfire so huge that it would go on burning for days on end. Then he had Abraham thrust into the flames. But a while later the prophet walked out of the fire, unhurt except for a strand of his hair that had turned white. In an instant, God had turned the flames into water and the red-hot embers of wood into fish. Thus was born the sacred pool of Rafah. Despite everything, Jamila didn't resent her life. After Pem and Edem got married, she convinced her father to let her remain single and assist the midwives in the region. He had agreed, thinking it was a temporary wish. She had persevered. Today her only regret was not being able to become a doctor. If the circumstances had been different, that would have been her aim. To work in a large, clean hospital and wear a white coat with a tag that said, Dr. Jamila Yetter. Doctor Enough Beauty. Asterisk. Leaning a little closer, Jamila cut 2 onions into thick slices and placed the rings under the patient's feet, wrapping them with linen scarves. While the onions drew the fever from the head towards the lower parts of the body, she kept changing the wet towel on his brow every few minutes and did what she always did when there was nothing else to do, she prayed. By midnight the smuggler's temperature had dropped. Satisfied, Jamila fell asleep on the chair, tumbling into a disturbing dream. She was in a city on fire, alone and heavily pregnant. She had to find a place to give birth, but everywhere she turned there was turmoil. Buildings came crumbling down, people dashed left and right, dogs held in fright. In the midst of the commotion, Jamila saw a huge bed with thick carved posts and silky pillows. She lay there and gave birth to a baby girl. Someone inquired as to her daughter's name, and she said, I shall call her Pem after my dead twin. Jamila woke up, her heart racing. She checked the smuggler's temperature. It was now nearly back to normal. He had made it. Outside, the day had broken. Rubbing her aching limbs, Jamila downed a glass of cold water and tried not to think about the dream. Quietly, she lit the stove and started to prepare breakfast. She heated a chunk of butter and cracked 3 eggs, adding a pinch of salt and some rosemary. Cooking had never been her strength. Mostly she was content with simple dishes, and, as she had no one to care for, she had never felt the need to refine her culinary skills. That smells good. What are you making? Jamila flinched, turning back. The smuggler was sitting up in bed, his hair unkempt, his stubble gold and brown. She said, Oh, it's just eggs. He gave a grunt that might have been appreciation and might not. And who on earth are you? I'm Jamila, the midwife. His expression grew reproachful. Why am I here? You were shot. It's a miracle that you survived. You've been here for a week now. Here, have some tea. He took a sip and spat it out. Yuck. What's this? It tastes like horse piss. It's a cure, she said, trying not to feel offended. You'd better drink it. And you'd better not spit in my house. Sorry, he said in a coarse whisper. I guess I have to thank you for saving my life. You should thank Allah, he's the one who saves lives. He pulled a face at the thought, and was silent for a while. Hey! Midwife, do you have a cigarette? You shouldn't smoke, Jamila said. Please, he said. Only a puff. Struggling through a range of emotions, Jamila produced a pouch of tobacco and some papers. As she began to roll a cigarette, he observed her hands, rough, red and chapped, sore from being washed thousands of times in cold water, the palms calloused from chopping wood. "You're a strange woman," he said. "So they say. How can you live here on your own? You need a man to protect you. Does your wife have a man to protect her now? I bet she's as lonely as I am. Some women are married and alone. Some, like me, are merely alone." The smuggler grinned, a half-humorous glint in his eyes. "I can marry you. My wife wouldn't mind. She'd be happy to have company." Jamila lit the cigarette, took a drag and blew out the smoke. She passed it to him, unwillingly, ignoring his hand brushing her fingertips ever so slightly. "That's very generous of you, but I'm happy the way I am." He gave her a judgmental look but made no comment. Then he spoke. Again, smoke streaming out of his nostrils, his voice trailing off. "There were 4 of us crossing the border. Did they tell you what happened to the other man?" Jamila shook her head, not sure she wanted to hear this. "He stepped on a landmine. That's the worst, believe me. I'm not afraid of being shot or going to prison, only of landmines. It won't happen to me, though. I'll be buried intact. All my organs with me. No missing parts." Not knowing how to respond, she asked, "Do you have any children?" 3 boys. 1 more on the way. He'll be a boy, inshallah. Any daughters? Yeah, 4 of them. He bent forward, coughing up phlegm, his face twisted in pain. "I must go back. They need me." "Well, they need you strong and healthy, not weak and wounded. You should get some rest first. Then you may leave. I've heard people talking about you. They say you have a jinni husband who visits you on moonless nights. He's the one who provides you with the secret cures, right?" Jamila took out a round copper tray from the cupboard, on which she placed flatbread, tea and the pan with the sizzling eggs. Carefully, she carried it to him. "A jinni husband." She smiled despite herself. "I'm afraid I'm just an ordinary human being, and my life is more boring than you think." As soon as she uttered these words she regretted them. It was better for her if the man thought she was an extraordinary creature, a woman like no other. She should not show him, or anyone else, her imperfections, her vulnerability, her humanness. If they knew you carried a heart of glass, they would break it. A boy made of wax. London, May 1978. On the day the squatters were arrested, Tobiko, too, was taken into custody. But, unlike the others, she vanished shortly after being released. No one knew where she had gone. Worried, Eunice knocked on the door next to the squat. An old man opened it a crack and peeped from behind the security chain. "Sorry to disturb you, sir. I'm looking for my friend, a girl with black hair and tattoos. She used to live in the house over there." "You mean where all the loonies live?" Eunice said hesitantly. "Don't know any girl with black hair and tattoos. I hope they've bloody gone for good," he said. "And good riddance too." The door was slammed shut. Eunice decided to search the town on his own. Pedaling his bicycle along street after street, running after every woman who even remotely resembled Tobiko, he looked round markets and supermarkets, laundrettes and off-licenses, but he still couldn't find her. So on that day in early May when he turned the corner of Kingsland Road, just steps away from the Rio Cinema, his mind everywhere and nowhere, it was Tobiko he was hoping to find. His drowsy eyes fell upon a couple who were standing in front of a flower stall, their backs turned to him, choosing a pot of flowers. He didn't know what it was about the couple that drew him in, but somehow he couldn't take his eyes off them. The man reached out and touched her wrist, caressing lightly, lovingly. Her slender body was tilted into him, as if at any moment she would put her head on his shoulder. Suddenly, Eunice felt an uncanny discomfort in his gut, a rushing in his ears. The familiarity of the woman's chestnut hair, the jade dress with capped sleeves and golden buttons, the shape of her waist and the gentle, graceful sweep of her arm. The boy's heart fluttered. His face went ashen, his lips became taut. The man pulled the woman towards him and whispered something in her ear, touching her neck with his lips, a quick, short brush, perhaps an accident. Innocent and unintended, a bashful exchange, after which she half turned and smiled, exposing a dimple in her right cheek. "Mum." The boy turned his bike around, pedaling fast. Under the layer of shock and panic that had fallen upon him, he was thinking, or some part of his brain was thinking, that he had never seen his mother like this before. The woman he had just watched was Mum, and yet so unlike her. There was an aura of happiness about her, as bright as the flowers she was buying. That evening Eunice came home looking like a boy made of wax, pale, insipid. Iskender and Esma teased him no end, saying he resembled one of the figures in Madame Tussauds. Pam was worried that he might have stomach flu and tried to make him drink peppermint tea. But Eunice rejected their pleasantries, ignored the banter and insisted on going to sleep early. That night he wet his bed around the Smuggler, a place near the river Euphrates, May 1978. That day, late in the afternoon, Jamila went out to collect some wood. On the way back she sat on a rock, brooding. Tucked into her belt was a letter, which she took out and stared at through empty eyes, as though she had forgotten what it was. But, unlike the monsters in her dreams, the paper was real. It was as real as the mountains that surrounded her and just as portentous. She began to read it again. "Jamila, my dear sister. Throughout all these years I must have sent you hundreds of letters. There were good days and bad days. But this has been the most difficult letter to write. Sister, I've met someone. Please don't frown. Please don't judge me. Give me a chance to explain, though I'm not sure I understand it myself. I cannot confide in anyone but you. Nobody knows. I'm scared witless. But I'm also full of joy and hope. How can this be? All this time I was convinced that my heart was dry, like a piece of leather, left in the sun for too long. Incapable of loving anyone, except you and my children. But never a man, I believed. When I met him, it was as if I had always known him. I couldn't put a word to this feeling. I tried hard to keep him out of my mind. I failed. He's a cook. Like you, he knows the language of herbs and spices. Outside, on the streets of London, the young demonstrate. Everybody is furious at something, but not him. He says only patient people can cook. He is a man of many lands and many names, but no native soil. Perhaps he carries his hometown on his back, like an ageless turtle. I know you must be appalled. I know what you're going to tell me, it's shaming. Mama's ghost will haunt me forever. Papa's too. I'd rather see the corpse of a daughter of mine in the Euphrates than have her bring me disgrace. That's what he said after I ran away, remember? Tell me, if you teach someone the alphabet, how can you stop him from reading? When one has tasted the elixir of love, how can she not thirst for it? Once you have seen yourself through your beloved's eyes, you're not the same person any longer. I was blind all this time, and now that my eyes are open, I'm afraid of the light. But I don't want to live like a mole. Not any more. My dear, do not forgive me if you don't find it in your heart to do so. But please love me. Now and always. I'll do the same too. Forever and ever. Your adoring twin, Pem. She must be drained, Jamila deduced. There was something debilitating about love, an obscure force that robbed you of your senses and strength. Adem might not care, but everyone else would rush to malign Pem. Friends and neighbors, relatives both here and there. Even if she managed to get an easy divorce, would this cook agree to marry her soon enough to silence the rumors? This man with a portable homeland, no sense of the past? He was an outsider, a Christian in all likelihood, which made matters worse. The more Jamila thought about it, the more she realized the impossibility of it all. She needed to get her sister out of London, out of harm's way. She had to protect Pem from gossip and slander, and, if need be, from herself. Thoughts racing through her mind, she reached her hut and walked in with a batch of dry sticks on her back. She put down her load by the fireplace, taking quick breaths. Out of the corner of her eye she noticed that the smuggler had left the sofa, after several weeks in her care, finally able to stand on his feet. She turned halfway towards him, smiling. That was when she noticed the rifle in his hand. You strike me as being a secretive woman, he said, pointing the weapon at her. What are you hiding, I wonder? How can I have anything? I'm a midwife. I'm not even paid money. For a fleeting moment he seemed convinced, but then he said, well, we'll see. Take me to the cellar first. What? Jamila faltered. How did he know about the cellar? But there's nothing there. Just old trinkets. Old trinkets are good, he said. The veins on his temples were swollen. His eyes bloodshot. Come on, show me the way. Her body, unused to receiving orders from anyone, grew taut, resistant. Move or I'll blow your head off and feed you to the dogs, he hissed. Then I'll go to the cellar all the same. She slid the carpet aside, opened the trapdoor and took a step back so he could see what was down below. No, he said. We're going together. You first. But wait. He threw her a rope and made her tie her hands together in the front. Loose enough for her to be able to use them, but so tight that she wouldn't be able to open the knot easily. I can't climb down like this. Oh, you're a smart woman. You'll figure it out. Balancing her weight with great difficulty, grasping the highest rung, Jamila inched her way down the ladder, step by step. He followed. She could sense he was in pain, his wounds still sore. Yet his greed was stronger. Ugh, what's this stink? He said, bending forward as if about to retch. For the first time in many years Jamila noticed the smell, spicy and tangy, all-pervasive. Well, what have you made yourself here? He exclaimed, looking around. He took a jar of mustard seeds and shook it suspiciously. I knew it. You're a witch. So tell me, what treasures are you hiding? Nothing. Herbs and medicines, as you can see. I prepare potions. One of them has healed you, remember? I thought you said only Allah could heal, he retorted. And, you know. What, you were right. It was none other than God. He always saves me. Men who haven't gone through half of what I have are dead. In their graves. But I'm alive. I always survive. He jabbed at her with the end of the rifle. She lost her balance, almost falling. I'm curious about how you taste, he said, as he took a step closer. And eyed her hips, her breasts. So you've never known a man? Poor thing. Maybe after this I should give you a ride, virgin midwife. He poured out the contents of bottles, sniffed at jars, emptied containers and smashed a few things carelessly. Jamila's mind was spinning. The amber concubine was there on the shelf, in its mother-of-pearl box. "Let's go upstairs," she said, her voice tense with the effort of concealing her unease. "What's upstairs?" "I'll cook for you, I'll wash your feet." The words cut the air like a knife. The smuggler stopped, his eyes searching. "Do you think I'm stupid?" She panicked. "No, of course not. You're a clever man. Why are you buttering me up? Why the change of heart? You should be hating me," he said, and then added, "Where are you looking?" Jamila realized her mistake. In her confusion, she had been glancing repeatedly towards the shelves behind him. His eyes followed hers. It didn't take him long to find the box. "Oh, you filthy sorceress. Look at this beauty. It must be worth a fortune. Where did you steal this from?" "It was a gift," Jamila replied wearily. "Oh, yes? You expect me to believe that?" he asked, as he pocketed the diamond. "Come on, turn around. We're going up now. You first. And no tricks." As soon as Jamila made a move towards the stairs, he knocked her down with the end of his rifle. She lurched forward, her forehead hitting the iron rung, her body no longer hers, the world the color of blood. Hours later she woke up. Her head was spinning, her stomach churning, and the pain in her temples so excruciating she didn't dare to open her eyes. For a few minutes she moaned on the floor like a blind kitten. Then slowly, very slowly, she stood up, waiting for her eyes to adjust to the dimness. She found a blade and cut the rope around her wrists. The entire cellar was in disarray, as if it had been plundered by an army. She saw the mother-of-pearl box on the table. She hadn't had a chance to tell the smuggler about the legend. The diamond was cursed. It could only be given or received as a gift. It could not be confiscated, it could not be taken by force, and it could not be sold. She climbed up, wincing with every step. When she reached the upper floor, she saw that the main door was open, the valley silent, airless. Suddenly everything seemed intimidating. The land that had nurtured and protected her all these years now teemed with scorpions, snakes, poisonous plants, vicious intruders. Traps that God had set for her. She started to cry, listening to herself wail as if overhearing a stranger, sobbing hard the way someone would who had forgotten how to cry and was only now beginning to remember. The rest of the day passed by agonizingly slowly. She didn't venture out. She didn't pray. She didn't eat. Nursing a cup of water on her lap, she sat on the sofa, numb to everything. Then she heard sounds. Men. Horses. Dogs. She wiped her eyes with the palms of her hands, the calluses on her fingers hard against her skin. He must be coming back with his friends, she thought. What else could he want? Her body? Her life? She couldn't find her rifle. He had taken that too. She grabbed a dagger, but her hands were trembling so hard she knew she'd never have the strength to use it. So she put it back and went to the door, determined to face her fate. Out of the dusk came 4 riders. Only one of them jumped off his horse and approached her, his boots squishing as if walking in thick mud. Jamila recognized the chief of the smugglers. The man whose wife had given birth to the 1.5 baby, the same man who had left the wounded smuggler with her and caused her this misery. Jamila. Sister. May I come in? Wordlessly, she moved aside, letting him pass. He saw the bruise on her forehead, the puffy eyes. I'm not going to stay long. We've already caused you much pain. I came to apologize for what happened. He did not deserve your kindness. She knew she should say something, but the words didn't reach her lips. I brought you things, he said. My gifts to you. Out of the pocket of his shalwar he produced 2 drawstring pouches in silk, one red, the other black. He reached out for her hands and held them for a moment while staring into her eyes. Then he put the red bundle on her left palm, on her right palm the black. Finally finding her voice, she inquired, "Where is he now?" "He won't give you any more trouble, trust me." "What was his name?" "I don't even know his name." "His name was Haroun," he said before he strode away back to his horse. "That's what we wrote on his stone." It took a moment for the words to register, and when they did she gave a gasp. Aghast, she opened the red bundle. Inside was the amber concubine. Dazzling. Jamila then untied the second bundle. In it was a pair of ears. Sad. Bloody. It was only then that she realized the 2 bundles were cut out of the same cloth, one having turned black with blood. In the end, though he had skirted the landmines, Haroun the smuggler was still buried with some parts missing. On an impulse, Jamila dashed after the chief. For a second she feared he had vanished, another ghost in her life. But then she spotted the 4 horses down the rutted path. "Wait for me." Jamila choked. He pulled on his reins, and his men followed suit. When she reached them, she hesitated, at a loss for words. Tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, she arranged her scarf. She pleaded, "I need your help, please. Tell me. I want to go to my sister in England. She's in trouble. She needs me." The men exchanged stares. "I don't have a passport or money." "Nothing. It has to be your way." "Illegal." Jamila opened her fist. "But I have the amber concubine and I'm allowed to give her to whomever I choose. And I choose you. You'll be a rich man and she won't bring you bad luck, trust me. You want to give me the diamond in return for arranging a trip abroad." "That's correct." The chief smuggler furrowed his eyebrows, pulling the ends of his mustache, brooding. "That's not easy. It's not like crossing the border to Syria. I've heard there are men who arrange such things. I cannot find them, but you can. Remember Ahmed's younger son? Didn't he go like that?" "Which country was it? Switzerland? They hit him in a lorry, right? He made it. Somehow." Once she'd begun, the words gushed out of her like a river. She spoke from the depths of her soul with urgency and fervor, guided by a need she did not recognize, and possibly could not control. He watched her, unmoving. In his deep-set eyes she saw several emotions at once: concern, understanding, loss, and a secret admiration. "I'll do what I can. If God wants it to happen, it will happen." Dazed, cold, shaking, she raised her hands and opened her palms, the diamond catching the last rays of the setting sun. "Take her. May Allah bless you." He turned his face away, as if talking to the wind now, and said, thickly, "Keep it. You deserve it, Jamila." Then, with a faint nod and without a further word, he kicked the sides of his horse. His men followed. She watched them gallop away, the dust from the hooves surrounding her like a haunting memory. Shrewsbury Prison, 1991. When I arrive back from solitary, there is someone new in Trippy's bunk. So soon. I guess I half expected they would give it a bit of time. But Shrewsbury is jam-packed. And every day there are new arrivals. The prison system reminds me of the factory where Dad used to work. Like biscuits on a conveyor belt, Cons keep coming. The screws. Arrange them, store them, lock them up. Cluster after cluster. This place is filled to the top. There is no room to mourn anyone. At first glance, my cellmate seems okay, pretty harmless. I don't ask him what he's in for and he doesn't volunteer it. Those things you don't raise. A wiry little man, he has a high forehead, angular jaw, chiseled face. His hair catches the overhead light, and for a split second I am struck by the kindness of his expression. Bowing slightly, he says, "My name is Zishan." He pauses, as if expecting me to introduce myself. I cross my arms and frown at him, zipping my lips. Then he says, "Zishan, happy to meet you." What a ridiculous thing to say. His English is a shambles. I'm guessing he's around 40. Far Eastern, brown, middle height. He tries to make small talk, but I'm having none of it. Better to draw the line right away. Any other man in his shoes would instantly give up on me. He'd be worrying about how much of what he'd heard about me was true and whether he can sleep safely tonight. And every night. For the next few months. But Zishan seems at ease. After enough playing mute, I decide to give him something to chew over. "The man who slept in that bed has died," I say. "Oh, I hear," Zishan says. "Also hear you good friends. Must be hard for you. Very, very sorry." "You mean condolences?" "Right." I draw a blank. Compassion always catches me off guard. I never know quite what to do with it. "Now, I don't care who you are or what your name is," I say. "I'll tell you the rules around here. The sooner you learn them, the better for you. Rule number 1, don't ever invade my space. Rule number 2, don't step on my toes. Rule number 3, don't get on my nerves. Clear?" He blinks in confusion. His small, slanted eyes dart from me to the wall, and from the wall back to me. "Zishan, clear," he says. Good. Soon we hear the sounds. It's time for the morning unlocking. Cell doors crack open on each side. We keep our silence, waiting to be counted, pushed, shoved, and patted down. Officer McLaughlin appears. A bandage on his left ear. He and I exchange hard stares. He hasn't forgiven me for wolfing down Trippy's letter, and I haven't forgiven him for winding me up. He hasn't forgiven me for biting his ear, and I haven't forgiven him for sending me to solitary. We're even and back to square one. Except sharper now. "Oi, I'm watching you," Officer McLaughlin says. "One more mistake and I'll be having you." I gnaw the insides of my mouth and say nothing. I take deep breaths to steady myself. He's standing so close I can see the wisps of hair in his nostrils. It's a nice distance, this one. I can easily butt his nose with a thrust of my forehead. Perfect angle. Pity, I let it go. When we're alone again, Zishan stares at me, full of curiosity. "Why he angry to you?" "'Cause he's a mouse pretending to be a man." Zishan laughs as if it's the best joke he's heard. "Mouse man, I like that." Then he turns thoughtful. "There are also fishmen, birdmen, snake men, elephant men. Very few human men in this world." I have no idea what he's talking about. There's something weird about this bloke, but I just can't nail it. He isn't put off easily, and that smile of his gets on my wick. I'm about to tell him to wipe it off his face when he says, "It not easy to fight always?" "What?" I say, processing his question. "Are you asking me if it's hard to have to fight all the time?" Yes, yes. I ask you. Fighting, not tired? I stare at him, stumped. He doesn't seem to be off his trolley. He sounds frank, genuinely inquiring. Where are you from? I ask. Oh, he pauses, as if I've posed an impossible riddle. First time I was born in Brunei. Where the hell's that? He looks offended. Brunei Darussalam. Island of Borneo. We a British colony. Then Brunei is independent. Well, the Queen's servants have done a rather poor job in teaching you English, then. I learn English, Zishan says, ignoring my snarky remark. I learn new things every day. Zishan, good student. I scoff. I still haven't decided if he's just annoying or plain barmy. You said, the first time I was born, what does that mean? I ask. He beams, exposing all his teeth, small, narrow, mottled, like wild rice. First time born in Brunei, Zishan repeats. Second time born in whole world. So I'm from everywhere. The world is my home. Suddenly the penny drops. Oh, bugger you. Don't tell me you're one of those religious crusaders. Are you a god botherer? A what? Question, are you a member of a cult or something? Again he doesn't get it, and for a second he looks frightened. 'Cause I'm telling you, I'm not having anyone preach me the righteous path. Sick and tired of all that rubbish. You'd better get off your soap box. Soapbox, he echoes, totally lost. What I mean is, are you a fanatic? Fanatic. Zishan's face brightens, happy to finally recognize a word. But then his expression gets serious. Fanatic says, everybody. Wrong, I am right. Zishan says, everybody right, I am wrong. How? Possible me fanatic? Okay. I can accept that. But then I am seized by a new thought. If you say you are from everywhere, then what's your religion? My religion is love, he says. I roll my eyes. Never heard of that. For a moment, he looks affronted. Ear hears what it can hear. Lots of sounds in this world we don't hear. So are you Buddhist, Jewish, Muslim, Christian? What are you? He says, as if I have stepped on his foot. You ask, are you this, are you that? He pounds on his chest. All universe is in one person. And that person is you? That person is you, he says, stressing the last word. Okay, that's it for me. The fun is over. Now he's rubbing me up the wrong way. I don't like self-righteous people who think they have an answer to everything. The universe, huh? I'll tell you what's in there. Aggression, brutality, corruption, terrorism. Then I add, murder. Says Zishan, as if he has never heard of any of these before. He closes his eyes, and for a second I have the impression he's going to sleep. But he soon starts to speak, his voice bright. You look at nature. You see animals kill animals. Big insects eat small insects. Wolf eats sheep. Oh, so much blood. But in nature also. Animals protect animals. Fish swim together. Birds fly in flocks. That's because there are sharks and hawks everywhere. If you stay together, there's a better chance of survival. Creatures care very much for creatures. Yeah, nice bullshit. He opens his eyes. Zishan, no bullshit. Well, I'm sorry to break the bad news. Nature is all about war. Same here under this roof. Same everywhere. It's a rat race. He leans forward and squints at me as if seeing through me. Harmony everywhere. He says, pronouncing the word harmony. Like how many? He then goes on, same here. But main question is there harmony inside you? These last words I hear is how many inside you? Perhaps it's the right question after all. I have no idea how many Iskanders I harbor within my soul. All right, I say. If it all boils down to bloody harmony, if the bad and the good balance each other, then everyone can do as they please. What difference does it make? No, not like that. You can't do whatever you want. You only do what God puts in you. I have elements. You have elements. Zishan. Mostly water. You, maybe fire? Yes, I think you fire. If there is no harmony inside, that person always angry. Always fight, always pity. Sharp tongue like arrow. Universe is jungle, you say. In big jungle, I make my own garden. What bleedin' garden are you talking about? Dear friend, says Zishan, as if writing me a letter. Anger is tiger. You see the tiger and you think, oh what great animal, I want a tiger. But you cannot tame him. No one can. The tiger will eat you. Forget angry tigers, we don't learn anything from them. We learn from humans. When you meet different person, another name, another religion, that's all good. We learn from difference, not from sameness. Ego is like vulture. Wild bird. Vulture says, fly with me, you become strong man. But that's lie. It's trick. If your ego strong you are weak. If ego weak, you strong. He speaks slowly but surely. He picks his words carefully, as if they were glass flowers. When he finishes, I say, there's only one thing I'm wondering. What is it? Why didn't they put you in the loony's wing? What's that? I rotate my index finger around my ear. He recognizes the universal gesture for insanity. He laughs, a happy laugh. Yes, yes, true. They say Zishan a bit crazy in the head. Asterisk. That day the police came to Katie's house, Iran out the back door. I was lucky. I nicked a bike, cycled out of Hackney as far as I could go. Then I hitchhiked. 2 French students gave me a lift. Their accents thicker than a plank. Gay as a picnic basket, both of them. I had never met a homosexual couple before, and didn't like the idea at all, but was in no position to judge them. They saw my distress, sensed trouble, didn't ask anything. They bought me lunch, offered cigarettes, made me listen to some odd music. They dropped me in Warwick. Before they left we smoked grass outside the castle. I remember us laughing our heads off, but I don't recall what the joke was, if there was one. Then they headed north. Suddenly I was on my own. For days later I was arrested, they caught me sleeping rough in one of the parks. By that time I was gasping for food. I was so worn out it was almost a relief. During the interrogation, I was calm, cooperative. They didn't tell me she was dead. Not for a while. I was confident that her injury was nothing big. It was only a stab, close to her right shoulder. How bad could it be? Then an officer came in and said, "Don't you know? You killed her." Gobsmacked, I said, "What d'you mean?" "You killed your own mum, you sick bastard. How are you going to worm your way out of that?" I didn't believe it. I thought it was a hoax to make me talk. One of those old coppa's tricks. But they took a newspaper and put it in front of me. The same clipping Officer McLaughlin had filed. Probably. That's when I learned Mum was dead. During the trial, I was numb. I froze, just as I had in the tree the day I was circumcised. The press. The photographers. There were people with placards against me outside the courtroom, complete strangers. There were people supporting me, again strangers. In the crowd I saw Esma's face, like a white mask. Then I saw my brother, Eunice. His eyes wide open, uncomprehending. That was when I couldn't breathe. My lungs wouldn't yield air. I collapsed, wheezing like an old man on a respirator. They thought it was an asthma attack. The doctor was kind. He examined me, found nothing. Then I got the shrink. Horrible man, full of shit. I threw an ashtray at his head, sadly it missed the wanker. But the very first night I was in the NIC I slumped on my bunk and stared at the ceiling. For a good hour. I wondered if the shrink could be right. Did I have issues that went deep? Was I out of my tiny mind? He's not insane, the prosecutor had declared in court. This young man is in his right mind. He deserves full punishment. Next night, again not a wink of sleep. In my experience, the worse you sleep, the crankier you end up. And so it went. Those early years felt like one long nightmare. And I was a nightmare to others. I gave them a hard time. Much later, one midnight, I remember it well. It was raining outside. Big storm, thunder, lightning and all. Then the rain stopped, but the silence felt worse. It was then that I had the strangest feeling. It was as if my mother was here with me. She wasn't upset or vexed. She was beyond such things. I started to sob. I cried, my chest heaving, hurting. All the tears that I couldn't shed all my life bled away from me. Asterisk. After spending 2 weeks with Zishan, I go against one of my own rules. I ask him, what are you in for? A man like you. His face falls. Oh, they say Zishan made terrible crime. No proof. But there is this gentleman. Court listened to him because he comes from famous surname. He say he saw me take handbag and harm old lady. She in hospital, coma. You assaulted an old woman for money? Zishan did no such thing, he says. When lady opens her eyes, she will tell the truth. I wait. I pray. Okay, let me see if I've got this right. So you're telling me you're in for a crime you haven't committed? You expect me to believe that? Crap. He gives me this queer look, as if wondering how to break the news. Then he says, since the day police come my house, I am thinking, why did this happen? Nothing happens for nothing. God has purpose, what is it? I ask but no answer. But now I understand. What are you going on about? Listen, I didn't know why God put me in jail. I said, why? But then I meet you. And I am not sad anymore. If you don't stop this gibberish, I'm gonna make you really sad. He doesn't look the least bit intimidated. Now I understand why. Zishan here. Thanks to you. He pauses, sighing. It'd be easier if you had come to me, of course. But no, you didn't. So I had to come to you. So Zishan becomes prisoner. All for a purpose. That's crap. Are you telling me that you're innocent of any crime? But some cosmic force sent you here for me? Yes, now you correct. He beams, happy as a child with a new balloon. The man is mad as a hatter. And he's getting worse every day. Unless he's doing it deliberately. It suddenly hits me. I grab him by the collar and push him against the wall. Did Officer McLaughlin put you in here with me? Is this his idea of teaching me a lesson? You want to drive me nuts, right? Is that the plan? He screws his face up as if I have already punched him. I tell you. God send me here. You say, McLaughlin. You're McLaughlin small, God is big. I let him go and rub my temples, the beginning of a headache. How old are you? I ask. He lowers his eyes, shyly. 67. No kidding. It's true. You don't look 67. Thank you, he says. Zishan looks at himself. You mean, looks after himself? Yes, looks after. Again he starts to talk crap. I came to you, he says. I was of no use lately and God brought me here because God doesn't like laziness. We should all work very hard. What work? Mystics say. What's that? Mystic, someone who looks inside heart, thinks all people connected. Difference is only on the outside, skin and clothes and passports. But human heart always the same. Everywhere. Here we go again. Another load of bollocks. He smiles either because he doesn't know what bollocks are or because he means to ignore me. Mystics believe when we die and wake up, God asks for questions. How did you spend your time, Where did you get your money from, How you spent youth, And fourth question, very important, what did you do with the knowledge I gave you? You understand? No. I have knowledge, he says. I am a teacher. I remember you telling me you were a student. Every teacher is student. Oh, give me a break. I am a teacher, he repeats calmly, and I came here to share my knowledge with you. I have seen all kinds of men inside. Among screws and my fellow prisoners alike. Psychos, loonies, the saddest, the weakest and the meanest, sometimes all together in the same person. But there never was and never will be anyone in Shrewsbury like Zishan. Born in Brunei, bred in the world. I don't know what to do with him. Iskender Toprak. Esma. London, May 1978. Uncle Tariq and Auntie Meryl came for a visit with their 4 children. After dinner we all gathered around the TV, watching Coronation Street while drinking tea and munching on fruit. There was little talk in the room apart from the occasional remarks addressed to the characters on the screen. Everyone was curious to see what would happen now that Susie had managed to seduce Steve and Gail had caught them in an intimate situation. Uncle Tariq didn't think the affair would last long. Aunt Meryl agreed, but nobody took her seriously because she always missed the point. I had to translate the key scenes for her because she didn't have enough English to follow the plot. Sometimes I added a few things of my own to strengthen the storyline. After the guests had left and everyone had gone to sleep, I was in the bathroom again, observing myself in the mirror, when a knock at the door yanked me from my reverie. Busy, I said through the keyhole. Another knock, timid but persistent. Annoyed, I opened the door. It was Eunice standing there in his Peter Pan pajamas. Oh, my goodness. What have you done to yourself? He exclaimed. Only now did I remember I had a goatee on my face. The best defense being a good offense, I retorted, what are you doing here at this hour? I need to pee. I switched to Turkish as I noticed the bed sheet tucked under his arm. You sure you need to pee? It looks like you've already taken care of that. My brother's eyes flickered away. There was a brief silence as we each waited for the other one to say something, anything. All right, I conceded. Just a sec, okay? I closed the door, turned the lights on, put out the candle and inspected my face one more time in the mirror. Then I poked out my head. Tell you what? Why don't you leave the bedsheet here? I'll take care of it. After a moment's hesitation, Eunice gave me a shy smile and handed over his guilt. I filled the basin with soapy water and soaked the sheet. I expected him to go back to his room, but he preferred to wait, peeking in through the half-open door. Sister, are you done? Almost. It's not easy in the sink, you know, I said lackadaisically. Why? Do you keep wetting your bed? Eunice was silent. Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to tell anyone. To my surprise, he didn't seem relieved. Quite the opposite, his face darkened, his lip quivered. I took a step towards him, smiling at his big, innocent eyes and jutting ears, the boy I had always loved. Sorry, little un. I didn't mean to offend. I'm not offended. It's just I've a lot on my mind these days. Like what? I can't tell you, he said. It's a secret. Secrets are tricky. You want to get it off your chest, but as soon as you do, the word gets around. Like King Midas? Who is that? So I told him the story of the king whose ears were so large that he had to hide them under his hat. His barber, the only person who knew of this, had promised not to tell anyone. Yet the urge to share was so strong, he confided in a reed, the most harmless being he could think of. Then someone made a flute out of the reed, played it in a concert, and the secret floated into the air. In a matter of days, everyone knew that the king had the ears of a donkey. You mean, I shouldn't tell anyone, said Eunice. Well, if it's anything important, I'd say just keep it to yourself. You can't trust anyone. Not even a reed. I half expected him to laugh, but he didn't. Instead, he dolefully stared at me before turning his back and disappearing down the corridor. Good night, Kanim, I murmured, even though I knew he couldn't hear me. As I stood there, my hands still soapy, I felt my chest tighten. A sneaking suspicion rose inside me. While I was dreaming of becoming a boy and contemplating all sorts of other mysteries, things were happening under my nose that I didn't see. Later on I would recall that moment, realizing it was the point at which ordinary life as I had known it fractured, and we all began to slip, one after another, into some other realm, where too much happened. Too fast. I have since wondered if things would have been different had I acted otherwise that night. Had I let my brother share with me the secret that was eating him up inside, perhaps, just perhaps, I might have woken up earlier and been able to warn my mother before everything took a quick turn for the worst. The Slap. London, June 1978. On this particular Saturday, Iskender did not go boxing. Nor did he meet Katie. He and his mates had other plans. He left the house shortly after 9 in the morning. A warm wind whisked his face, and the world seemed to open before him, making him feel alive, ready for anything. Pulling up the collar of his jacket, he maintained a steady pace. He believed the way a man walked said a great deal about him, his drawbacks, his wits, his courage, reflected in his gait. Iskender trod with a slight forward thrust, his shoulders straight and his chin raised, as if sizing up the passers-by for a fight. The boys were waiting for him in Aladdin's cave. The 4 of them slouched over a plastic table towards the back. As he approached them, Iskender nodded in their direction. They returned the gesture. He noticed the respect in their eyes, the kind of respect that his father had never seen from anyone, including his gambling cronies, except perhaps on the days he won. Hiya, Iskender said to no one in particular. Where's Arshad? He's not here yet, said Farid, a short, soft-spoken Moroccan. Maybe he bloody wimped out, said Aziz with a grin that displayed his gappy teeth. After this week I don't blame him. It had been a tense summer. Every day there was talk about another incident somewhere. Men were intimidated on the streets, women called names, children spat at. At nights bricks were hurled into the houses of immigrants, the washing on their lines was cut to pieces or dog turds were put through their letterboxes. But the worst had happened 6 days ago. On the 11th of June, early in the morning, a group of skinheads had gathered at the top of Brick Lane. By midday their numbers had swollen. They kept coming, on foot, by bike, car and van, some from as far as Putney. Then the march began, the chant was taken up, the National Front is a white man's front. Oddly, the police were nowhere to be seen even when the protesters started to attack the shops of immigrants, shouting "Kill the black bastards," smashing windscreens and windows, harming private property. Farid said, "Did you hear what the coppers said afterwards?" A spontaneous outbreak, they called it. "It sucks," said Iskender distractedly. The conversation was interrupted by Aladdin, the owner of the place, a lopsided, broad-boned man in his mid-50s, with one leg shorter than the other. Always had a kind word for everyone. He approached the boys with a smile but shook hands only with Iskender. He asked him how school was going and how his mother was doing, and how his uncle's shop was doing in these hard times. Questions that Iskender answered respectfully but curtly. "So what are you gonna eat?" said Aladdin finally. "Your friends waited for you to order." Iskender was pleased to hear that. "We've a guest coming. We'll order when he's here." They watched Aladdin limp away. Iskender turned to Aziz, resuming the conversation. "Anything else?" "Oh, yeah, a boy was beaten up yesterday. A Bengali. They found him bleeding steps away from Arshad's house. That makes 4 in a month." Iskender chewed the insides of his mouth, his face crumpling like a mask. "You know what drives me mad?" ventured Sunny. "These racist buggers say they're not racists. We are realists." "Bollocks. It's bad enough that they're racists. They don't need to be liars on top of that." His name was Salvatore, though everyone called him Sunny. His family had moved to Hackney from a village in Sicily. He spoke English so quickly and with an accent so strong that all too often half the things he said were lost on others. "So when is this bloke coming? The famous chinwagger?" It was Chico who asked this, his fingers drumming on the menu. His father was Moroccan, his mother Spanish. "Don't call him that," said Aziz. "Respect the man. Call him the orator. Same difference. You know what they say. The fool talks, the wise man listens. And this bloke always talks. So you do the maths." Iskender sat back with a frown and clasped his hands, a gesture that altered the tone around the table from jovial patter to a more sober exchange. "He'll be here in half an hour. I thought it'd be nice if we met early and had a discussion. Things aren't rolling right. We'd be fools not to see the writing on the wall." Chico lowered his gaze. The others nodded, solemn and keyed up. "They want to kick us out of this bloody country," Iskender said. "You, me, him. Arabs, Turks, Italians, Jamaicans, Lebanese, Pakistanis. Are we just gonna sit and joke about it? Like fucking ducks at the fun fair? That's what our parents want us to do. Smile and wait to be shot. But we're no ducks, are we?" "Of course not," Chico said. "Look, I've heard this bloke speak before. He's good, really good. Let him come and say what he has to say. If you don't like him, you don't like him. That's the end of it. But at least he's no duck, we all know that." Just then the door opened and Arshad walked in, his hands thrust in his pockets. When Iskender saw the girl following his friend, his face changed. What the hell is she doing here? Hey, don't blame me, man. I tried to stop her, Arshad said. Iskender stared daggers at Esma. Go back home. No, I want to listen too, she said. The boys watched the row with guarded smiles. Sis, I'm tired of your pig-headedness, Iskender said. I'm not going to argue with you. Well, don't argue, then. You're getting on my nerves. This isn't stuff for girls. Why not? Do you think those skinheads bully only men? You're damn wrong. They attack women too. And girls. If I'm good enough to be a victim, I'm good enough to fight back. She's got a point, said Aziz. Heartened by the support, Esma pleaded, oh, come on, Abi, please. Iskender shook his head, albeit less forcefully this time. All right, but I don't want to hear anything from you. Not a peep. Yup. I'll sit here like a corpse, she said, trying not to let the joy show in her face, but then added mirthfully, I'm dying to see what this bloke looks like. I'm sure I'll recognize him right away. That assumption, however, turned out to be wrong. When the orator walked into the now half-full cafe, no one in the gang but Iskender identified him. The others had expected a sturdy, impressive person of an indeterminate age, wearing half-traditional, half-exotic garments, his hair flowing in every direction, his eyes sparkling like emeralds. So when a gaunt man in his mid-20s with ordinary features and faded jeans entered, they didn't give him a second glance, until he approached and greeted them. Oh, please have a seat, said Iskender. He briefly introduced everyone, leaving Esma out. Food was ordered. Hummus, babaganish, kebabs, falafel. Iskender filled the guest's plate, which turned out to be pointless, for the man ate like a bird. His poor appetite slowed everyone down, even Sunny, who was always hungry, had to stop eating. Then, while they were having their tea, the orator began to preach. His voice was thin, but it rose in waves, pausing every few minutes and picking up again, as if he were reading from an invisible pamphlet. He talked about the stages of late capitalism, and how close humanity had come to the Judgment Day. We are all looking down the cliff. We'll see the fall of this regime. The youth today were being doped so that they wouldn't question the system. Politicians everywhere were manipulating half of the drug traffic in the world. All ideologies were inventions to keep the young people in a constant daze. The fake isms were the new drugs, sleeping pills for the masses. My aunt is a feminist, said Sunny, slightly nervous from not having eaten enough. Her hair is shorter than mine and she always wears trousers. Feminism to us is like a snowman in the Sahara, commented the orator. There is no need for it. And do you know why? Because it makes women ugly. They don't even shave their legs any more. Disgusting, said Sunny. The boys suppressed a chuckle while Esma rolled her eyes. Iskender was the only one staring at the orator. Their eyes met with a mutual understanding, a shared sense of being above boyish reactions. I'd say, our friend here is right because feminism does make women look unnatural, the orator said. But that's a result, not a reason. Whereas I am asking why is it irrelevant for people like us? Because it's their problem, Iskender answered. It's a Western thing. Carrying a trayful of tea, Aladdin overheard the last words, his eyebrows arching suspiciously. For a second Iskender had a hunch Aladdin knew about this orator and didn't like him. Blokes like that are sowing bad seeds in the community. What's he doing here, putting things into the lads' heads? As if he had sensed Aladdin's dislike, the orator fell silent and did not speak a word until the drinks were served and they were again left alone. Exactly. Feminism is their answer to their problems, the orator continued, a glint of appreciation in his eyes. But it's a lame solution. Can you dry up a lake with a sponge? That's how effective feminists are. If Westerners have no family values and no respect for women, a bunch of activists screaming their heads off on the streets isn't going to change anything. Esma gave a snort. Out of the corner of his eye, Iskender sent her a cold, menacing glance. Sorry, she silently mouthed. Behave, Iskender mouthed back. If the orator had noticed their peaceful exchange, he pretended not to. In the West, people are confused. They confuse happiness with freedom and freedom with promiscuity. Whereas we respect our mothers, sisters, and wives. We don't force them to dress up like Barbie dolls. It's a whole industry. Cosmetics, fashion, shoe designers. Have you ever heard of anorexia nervosa? The boys shook their heads. It's an obsession with body image. Women who suffer from it are on a diet all the time. They make themselves vomit after they eat. Every year, dozens of women in Europe and the States are hospitalized because of this illness. Some die. Their hearts fail. But they still think they are fat. Brothers, don't forget that in the meantime, babies in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East are dying of hunger. They cannot find a piece of bread to nibble. Never seen a sweet in their lives. While the women in the West puke up chocolate brandy cakes in posh restaurants, people in the third world are starving. It's no coincidence that the two major industries in the West are the machine of war and the machine of beauty. With the machine of war they attack, imprison, torture and kill. But the machine of beauty is no less evil. All those glittery dresses, fashion magazines, androgynous men and butch women. Everything is blurred. The machine of beauty is controlling your minds. A sense of awe canopied the table. Stifling a gasp, Esma examined her fingernails. She wished Iskender could make light of the situation. Pat the man on the back, tell them to take it easy, make them all laugh. He could if he wanted to. He had it in him. That kind of boldness, that kind of lightness, she thought. And yet, when she raised her head, the expression she found on her brother's face was nothing like what she had hoped for. Alex, can we please get some more tea? Esma asked. All this talk is making me thirsty. The orator checked his watch. Time for me to leave. It was nice to meet you. As he stood up, he turned to Iskender. Why does she call you Alex? Don't mind her. She's my sister. Everybody calls me that. You know. It's short for. Alex is not short for Iskender, the orator inveighed. Think about it. Again, brother. Are we going to have to change our names so that the Brits can pronounce them more easily? What else will we have to give up? It should be the other way round. Make everyone learn your full name and say it with respect. With that he left, leaving an awkward silence in his wake. Iskender jumped to his feet, nervous. I'll walk Esma home and come back. Hey, I don't want to leave yet. But he had already reached the door. Chop, chop. Now. Esma complied, grumbling. As soon as they were outside on the street, she exclaimed, bloody hell, I didn't like that bloke. Mr. Uppity on his high horse. You might not like him, but he's a fighter. He's harsh. When the reality is harsh, you too need to be. Come on, he's just a macho tosser. He didn't even look at my face. That's because he respected you, you twat. Would you prefer men ogling your legs? Is that what you want? Oh, what's wrong with you, she said, throwing her hands up. Relax. All this nonsense is going to your head. Watch your mouth, Esma. Yeah, I'm so scared. You heard me. You're not coming to our meetings anymore. I can't keep an eye on you all the time. Who says you have to keep an eye on me? She snapped. I can take care of myself, thank you very much. It's all Mum's fault. She raised you like this. Malamine, Barraman, *, and now you think you're the Sultan of Hackney. Shut up. Esma didn't notice the change in his tone, the clenching of his fists, until it was too late. She was too carried away by her own voice. We were a team, you and me. It was fun. We used to laugh. Nothing's fun now. Look at you, look how seriously you're taking yourself. Iskender grabbed her by the shoulder and pushed her against a wall. People are being beaten up on the streets. An old man was knocked unconscious by stones just last week. What fun are you talking about? Oh, so you're the big hero. Save us, please. The slap. It came suddenly, as if from out of nowhere. Esma held her cheek, too shocked to move. You stay away from this, he said, without looking at her. I warn you. She watched him strut back to the cafe, hurrying. Once she thought she knew her elder brother like the back of her hand, but no longer. He had always protected her from others. Yet now, for the first time, Esma felt as if she had to protect herself from him. A big, brown trout. London, July 1978. When Eunice ran into Tabiko after weeks of desperate searching, he was overcome with a mixture of relief and dread. Relief at having found her, when he had almost given up hope, but also a harrowing fear of losing her again. He clung to her like a clam to its shell. She had changed somewhat, gained a bit of weight. Her hair, dark and shiny like a black pebble in rain, was still long, but the ends were now dyed an incandescent green. She had replaced the silver piercing on her bottom lip with a sparkling stud. On each earlobe she wore half a dozen crimson hearts, as tiny and bright as droplets of blood. Eunice counted them, noticing, once again, how small her ears were and how very pretty. Tight-lipped, Tabiko refused to explain where she had been all this time, or why she had failed to leave a note. Here and there. Needed a change of air, pet. Eunice was annoyed to learn where she was staying, in a 3-bedroom maisonette with the captain and his mother. A few others from the squad were also there. The captain's mother, Mrs. Powell, was a retired teacher, a widow. In reality, she had little tolerance for the group under her roof, but she had agreed to host them for a while in the hope of spending more time with her only son. She had moved into the bedroom upstairs with her TV and hot water bottle, leaving the rest of the flat to the punks. She seldom ventured out of her room, having all her meals there, pretending not to notice the incessant commotion or the smell of weed coming from downstairs. The first time Eunice visited the punks in that flat, he sat on the sofa next to Tabiko, small and smiling. It's a temporary solution, said the captain by way of explanation. Until we go back to our old place. We're gonna bring everyone together again. We're getting our house back and this time nobody's gonna kick us out. We've learned our lesson, said Bogart, a cigarette between his lips, and a guitar with only 2 strings in his hand. We'll kick their arses. There was someone new with them who had no hair except for a mop on top, which he had dyed different shades of orange. He was nicknamed Mr. Filch because he didn't believe in the need to pay for anything, books, LPs, food, underwear, Once he lifted a pair of Doc Martens, carrying a boot inside each sleeve of his gabardine coat. Now, sitting back with a grin, Mr. Filch interjected, "Yeah, you're like cats. Licking your wounds." Eunice listened to their blather, glad to have them in his life again, oddly soothed by their unconventional ways. Noticing his happiness, Bogart remarked, "The kid is like a cat too." "And you're his cozy little basket," the captain said to Tabiko with a wink. Tabiko laughed, but only a little, so as not to offend Eunice. To change the subject, she turned to Bogart and asked, "What was that you were playing?" "Oh, it's a song I composed. You know, I was thinking the squat raid was our Bloody Sunday. Sort of. So I made this song. It's called Bloody Tuesday." Needing no further incentive, Bogart began to sing. The melody was terrible, the lyrics even worse. "I'm on the edge, I'm on the dole. Like a stone I tumbled into this hole. This hole, this hole, this hole, this hole. The old bill don't ring before they haul. Bloody Tuesday, worst day of all. Rise against the system. It has no soul. No soul, no soul, no soul, no soul." Iggy Pop, wearing an Afghan waistcoat and a buff-colored t-shirt so short that it barely covered his nipples, plugged his ears with his fingers. "Ow, can't you shut your bleedin' gob?" "What?" Bogart exclaimed, stopping halfway. "It's shite, man," said Iggy Pop. "It wasn't even a Tuesday," said Tabiko. "It was Wednesday when they raided." Bogart frowned. "Says who?" Eunice listened, half amused, half worried, knowing how easily they could move from childish merriment to outright war when they were stoned. Slamming the doors, shouting and swearing, at one another or at themselves. "What do you lot know? You knobheads," scoffed Bogart. He paused for a moment, scowling at Tabiko. "You don't flipping remember what you had for breakfast?" "Let's ask Eunice," suggested Tabiko. "He's neutral." "Neutral my arse," the captain objected. "He's so soft on you, say snow is black, and he'd totally agree." Blushing profusely but feigning ignorance, Eunice knew he had to say something, a remark interesting enough to distract them. So he announced, "I want to have a tattoo." Bogart chuckled. "Whoa. This lad is cool." "We'll do it," said Iggy Pop. "No problem. I'm the best tattoo artist in town." "Darlin', won't your ma'am get upset?" Tabiko asked tenderly. Eunice had already thought about this. "Well, she will if she sees it. But if you put it somewhere on my back, she won't know." "Clever boy," said Mr. Filch. "I'll go and fetch the set," said Iggy Pop, rubbing his hands together. "And I need to have a pee," said Eunice quietly. Upstairs, there were 2 doors, one on each side of the corridor. After a brief hesitation, Eunice opened the one on the left. He was surprised to see a woman sitting in bed in a mauve nightgown, munching from a box of Ritz crackers, watching the new episode of the South Bank show. Her hair was a bird's nest and she must have been crying, as there were streaks of mascara on her cheeks. She looked slightly bonkers. "Sorry, ma'am." Eunice was about to close the door when the woman murmured without taking her eyes off the screen, "Are they recruiting you?" The boy stopped in his tracks, not sure if the words had been addressed to him. "Pardon? Are they recruiting you?" the woman repeated. "Will you be the youngest delinquent in England?" "No," Eunice replied, alarmed. "That's good," she said, still talking to the TV. "All my life I've worked with children, but I can't help my own son." Now Eunice looked at the woman more carefully, recognizing Mrs. Powell, the teacher who had come to see his parents about his sister's education. He also saw how much she resembled the captain: wide forehead, long nose with round tip, slightly protruding flint gray eyes. When my son was your age he was so adorable, she went on. Children are delightful when they're babies, but then they start to walk and break everything, and when they grow up they hate you. Mrs. Powell turned towards Eunice, her gaze a searchlight. There were dark bags under her eyes. She looked tired, in need of a good sleep. What do you call your mother, darling? I call her Mum, said Eunice. Well, tell her she's a lucky woman. My son calls me the system. He thinks I'm a bourgeois buffoon. She sighed. Do you think he's right? Oh, no, Eunice said, perturbed. He remembered having promised to Biko a while ago that he would never let the system get anywhere near him. Yet he didn't take to his heels. I think you're a beautiful lady, Mrs. Powell. You just have to see yourself in sunshine. The woman stood stunned for a moment before she broke into a chuckle. A husky croak, but when she looked again there was a new sparkle in her eyes. That's the sweetest thing I've heard lately. Cheers, ma'am. When Eunice returned to the living room, he found Tabiko sitting by the window, looking at a bird in the garden, its feathers iridescent in the afternoon sun. She had 2 mugs of hot chocolate ready. As they sipped their drinks, Eunice ventured, May I ask you something? Sure, pet. About secrets, he said nervously. My sister says you should never share them with anyone. Not even a reed. Tabiko studied him curiously. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I suppose I'm trying to ask. If there is a person you love and that person has a secret that nobody knows and it's a bit embarrassing, but you find it out, do you think you should tell her that or not? Wow, that's a tough one. I think you'd better keep stum, then. And with those words Tabiko placed her head on the boy's shoulder. Carefully, not with her full weight. Eunice's heart pulsed in the hollow of his throat. He wished the moment could go on forever. But soon the captain and the others returned, carrying a box of needles and tattoo designs. All righty. Let's get to work, said Iggy Pop. Look, this could hurt a bit. Is that okay? Eunice nodded, biting his lip. And what kind of tattoo would you like? A word? A symbol? Can you make me a whale, please? Asked Eunice. Like the one that swallowed the prophet. When the tattoo was finished, it looked more like a big, brown trout, the fish that Grandma Nays had, in another life, in a bygone world, wished to become head of the family. London, September 1978. Iskender's 4th encounter with the Order was different from all their previous ones. The man had wanted to see him alone and somewhere other than Aladdin's cave. They had agreed to meet in Victoria Park. Entering the park through Royal Gate, Iskender strode resolutely towards the Victoria Fountain. He slowed down when he spotted the Order standing with his back to a horse chestnut tree, a satchel by his side, his hands in his pockets, his face pensive but otherwise inscrutable. From the way he looked, it was hard to tell whether he had been waiting a long time or had just arrived. Today he wore thin-rimmed glasses that accentuated the square shape of his face. He had brown pointed shoes, a loose faded jacket and the kind of jeans only a mother would buy for her son, Iskender thought to himself. Hiya, Iskender said, raising his hand to salute. The Order smiled faintly. Come, let's take a walk. Though he wasn't exactly in the mood, Iskender agreed. Sure. The sun was shining in a clear sky. Nearby, the lake was serene, a carpet of jade green with a pale mist hanging above the opposite shore. There were parents and children tossing bread pellets to the ducks. There were a few people out jogging. One couple on the grass seemed deep in the throes of passion. Iskender noticed the orator avert his gaze, the thinnest wrinkle forming on his forehead. Finally, tired of walking, they found an empty bench where they could sit and talk in private. "You strike me as someone with solid friendships," said the orator. "Yeah, my friends are cool," Iskender said brightly. "Are you their leader?" Iskender hesitated. He never referred to himself in that way. "That's all right," said the orator, reading his mind. "It's good that you're in charge, but that you don't act like it. That's noble." "Thanks," Iskender said. No one had called him noble before, and he could not help but feel a glow of pride. "Your mates are decent enough, but they're still boys, really. Long way to go. You're different. Far more mature." "How has that come about?" "My father isn't around," Iskender heard himself saying. "I had to grow up at top speed, if you know what I mean." The orator nodded. "Well, that explains it." Iskender felt a warm sense of worth, almost liquid, a new thrill in his veins. He had not realized this before, even though it had been in front of his eyes the entire time. He had grown up fast. "I'm the eldest, you see. I've a younger brother and sister." "I remember your sister," said the orator. There was an edge to his voice. "Yeah, sorry she was a bit rude that time you met." "That's all right. Don't blame her. She's young. Her mind's in a jumble. The things she picks up from other girls, the magazines she reads, and there is TV, of course. A bombardment of propaganda." Iskender chewed his lip, listening. "It's harder for women, that's the thing. There are too many distractions to divert them from the right path. All the glitter of the fashion world, then. There's the search for rich husbands, smart furniture. It never ends." "Right," Iskender said. "If you don't mind my asking, why is your father not around?" Iskender's jaw moved silently for a second, as though he were swallowing the first answer that came to mind. He felt uneasy, under scrutiny. Was this a test? Did the man know about his father? Was he checking to see whether Iskender trusted him? If it was a test, he didn't like it. "He's got another life, is all," he said curtly. "I see. How is it you don't reveal the slightest thing about yourself but expect everyone else to unveil themselves to you?" The orator smiled, a quick glimmer of sarcasm. "That's what I like about you. You've got a lot of balls. If you don't like someone's attitude, you don't put up with it. You're a risk-taker by nature. No one messes around with you." "That's correct," Iskender said. "No bollocks." "Well, I respect that. I suppose, just like you, I don't like to open up. But now that you've asked, I will." Iskender's face softened a touch. He felt a bit embarrassed about his momentary outburst. "My father, Khalid, was born in Egypt and came to Birmingham in 1951. He taught himself English while working night shifts. If you don't work hard, you'll end up as nothing. That was his biggest fear, you know. Becoming a nothing. He changed his clothes, his food, his habits, but the accent remained. He married an English woman and I was born. They're nice people. Don't get me wrong. The trouble is they're so caught up in this world, they forgot the next. They have no faith. I feel sorry for them." A young woman whizzed by on roller skates, wearing shorts and a baseball jacket, both purple. Iskender stared at her legs before going back to what he was planning to say. "Yeah, but at the end of the day, they are your parents. And I love them, but that doesn't mean I respect them. They are quite different things, love and respect. If your parents slip up, you've got to stand up against them. My father, said Iskender, not quite knowing where he was going with this. As we grew up, he was never around. Then he left the house. Just like that. It's been almost a year. He was trying to make light of the subject, but he couldn't hide the tremor in his voice. Pushing back his glasses, the orator studied Iskender. So you are the head of the family now. It must be tough. You've got to be strong. It's good that you're into boxing. But you also need moral fortitude. I see what you mean, Iskender said, slightly unsure whether he did. The orator opened his satchel and took out 2 booklets. Take these. When you've read them, let's talk again. Tell me what you like in each. And feel free to say what you don't like. Esma loves books. I'm not much of a reader myself. Well, that has to change, then. He did not look bossy when he uttered this, merely purposeful. The mind needs ideas the way a car needs fuel to run. And ideas come from books, largely. Yeah, I guess you're right. By the way, keep them to yourself, will you? You can trust me, said Iskender, and was about to say more when his eyes slid to his watch. Oh, no. Gotta go. The orator clicked his tongue against his teeth, a hint of betrayal creeping into his gaze. A girl? Yup. English? Yup. Why not one of ours? The question had taken Iskender by surprise. He had always thought of the differences between Katie and him as a matter of clashing personalities. Never anything beyond that. Besides, the orator himself was English through and through, wasn't he? When Iskender spoke again, his tone dripped with irritation. I dunno. It just happened. Is she a good girl? She's all right, Iskender said, even though he didn't really know what he meant by that. Well, go, then. Don't make her wait. I'll pray that he may guide you in the right direction. Thanks, see you around, Iskender muttered, pretending not to be annoyed by the man's intrusiveness. The Debt. London, September 30th, 1978. Late in the afternoon on Saturday, Iskender popped into Tariq's shop, the collar of his jacket turned up. His uncle stood up to greet him, a proud smile on his face. The boy had changed a lot over the course of this year. He was already taller than his father, and much fitter, stronger. The thinnest mustache traced the curve of his upper lip, and his eyes were shining with the fervor of his youth. Look who is here, my favorite nephew. Iskender gave a faint smile. How are you doing, uncle? Never better, Tariq said. To what do I owe the pleasure? I'm gonna meet a few friends in the neighborhood, and I thought I should visit you first. The boy spoke a hybrid of Turkish and English slang. Though he did not have a terrible accent, his vocabulary was so limited he often used the same words to mean different things. As he stood listening, Tariq thought about sending him to live in Istanbul for a while, perhaps for good. Or, better yet, he would talk to Pem and bring over a fiancée for him, a modest girl from an Anatolian village. How's school going? Do you enjoy your classes? Are the teachers treating you well? School is fine, replied Iskender offhandedly. And how about boxing? I've an upcoming match, Iskender said. But Mom doesn't approve. Well, I can't blame her. She's worried that you might get hurt. Iskender remained silent for a moment, listening to the steady clatter of rosary beads. Uncle, a friend of mine is in trouble. And this friend of yours came to you for advice, eh? Yeah, I'm like a big brother to the boys. That's why he came to me. And what exactly is your friend's problem? He needs money. Tarek suppressed a sigh. How much cash are we talking about? When Iskender mentioned the amount, Tarek stroked his beard, asking, why would a young boy need that much? A shadow of concern crossed Iskender's face, a furtive look, but when he spoke his voice was unperturbed. It seems like his girlfriend got pregnant. The money is for the clinic. Tarek sucked at his teeth. This girlfriend, he paused. Is she English? English? Why, yes, of course, said Iskender. That was a relief, that the girl was not one of the neighborhood, or from another immigrant community. There would be no families involved, no fathers or big brothers with a vendetta. Tarek exhaled deeply, as if releasing all the questions he had decided not to ask. Conscious of the boy watching him, he stood up and walked towards the safe, which he kept at the back of the shop. When he came back, there were banknotes in his hands. He put them in front of Iskender, who for a moment felt the need to glance away, uneasy. Tell your friend that you'll help him, Tarek said. Thank you, Uncle. But also let him know that this will be the last time you're cleaning up his mess. Your friend needs to get a hold of himself. Otherwise he's in for deeper troubles. You send him my regards and make sure he understands. Don't worry. I'll make sure he gets the message, Iskender said, as he put the banknotes in his pocket and headed to the door. Then he stopped. Uncle? Was there anything else? Tarek squinted, suddenly suspicious that the boy might be the sort of trouble a few banknotes couldn't solve. Nothing else. Just wanted to say you're like a father to me. At which Tarek's face softened. Anytime, son. I'm always here for you. Iskender gave the smallest of nods, suddenly serious. Someday soon I'll pay you back. You'll see. The Man from Beyond. London, October 1978. On Friday, when Meryl entered the shop at her usual time, she found her husband absorbed in a phone conversation. Tarek had thrust his chin forward and was pulling at his beard, the way he always did when he was about to lose his temper. Whoever was on the other end of the line seemed to be doing most of the talking. Quietly, Meryl swished past him, heading towards the back of the shop, where she opened her tin pail and began to set out her husband's lunch. Today she had cooked mantai, putting more chili peppers into the yogurt and butter sauce than usual, and she was worried that he might not like it. Once she had set the table, Meryl grabbed a damp towel and began to dust the shelves, the golden bracelets on her wrists clattering jauntily. She inspected the tins of meat and baked beans, the bottles of brown sauce, the tubs of coleslaw and potato salad, the jars of pickled onions, food she had never tasted. Who buys such things? She had once asked her husband. Modern wives, Tarek had replied. They don't have time to cook. All day long they work. In the evening they pop in, buy some tinned tuna, mix it with salad cream and call it supper. Meryl wondered what kind of women they were. What types of families did they come from? Even the women on the cover of the men's magazines didn't surprise her as much as these wives who were not wives. The girls in the magazines must have been either deceived or paid a fortune to pose in their birthday suits. They were fallen, may God help them to find the right path. But the modern wives were by no means victims. They earned money, drove cars, dressed smartly, and some even had children, yet they would not even stuff green peppers for their husbands. Deep inside, Meryl suspected that her sister-in-law, too, had that attitude. In her. Hidden, of course, nothing in the open. There was an independent streak in Pem that she couldn't quite put her finger on, an undertow of unruliness in a sea of calm. But then Pem's husband was no good. He hadn't shown up in 10 months, and had not exactly been around before then. Her husband wasn't like that at all. Wife, Tarek yelled, still holding the receiver in his hand. What is it? Tilting his head to the side, Tarek gestured towards the door. 3 customers had just walked in. 2 boys and a girl. So young. Probably the same age as my elder daughter, Meryl thought. One of the boys had silver piercings on his eyebrows, and a lump of orange hair on top of his head, like a nest built by some exotic bird. The other boy was tall and lanky, and wore no shirt under his Afghan waistcoat, exposing his hairless chest. As for the girl, she had raven hair, skin as pale as flour, torn stockings, and tattoos on every bit of flesh you could see. Meryl closed her eyes for a moment, as if she hoped that the youngsters would be gone when she reopened them. I bet she won't serve us, the girl muttered. Oh, no. Did we scare you, lady? The shirtless boy asked, leaning over the counter, half accusing, half amused. Meryl caught the smell of the young man's breath. It was tinged with beer and tobacco. Inadvertently, she took a step back. Out of the corner of her eye, she checked on her husband. Tarek was still on the phone, and it didn't seem like he would be getting off any time soon. Yes, what you want? Meryl asked guardedly. How many times had she asked her husband to put in extra security in the shop, but he had refused on the grounds that it was too expensive. The only weapon that Meryl could think of now, should the need arise, was a rod with a net that they used to take down items stored on the upper shelves. You got ginger ale, lady? Asked the orange-haired boy. Raising her chin as if ready for a blow, Meryl said, no ginger. Her voice was feeble, insecure. Having no idea what they were talking about, she had found it safer to reject the possibility straight away. But in the meantime, the shirtless boy had discovered the fridge, where they kept the fizzy drinks. Oi, lady, you got loads of it here. Why did you say no? Maybe she's planning to guzzle it all herself, the orange-haired boy offered, scrunching up his nose. Don't be silly, interjected the girl, pointing at the shelves behind the counter. She then said, may I have a pack of marshmallows, please? Meryl's gaze raked the merchandise in bewilderment. What on earth does the girl want? She grabbed the chocolate buttons, the licorice bootlaces, the jelly babies, while the punks exclaimed in unison, no, not those, until she found the requested item. Their prattle was cut off by Tarek's booming voice. Clasping his hands behind his back, fingering his rosary beads, he approached them. Welcome, he said, and turned to his wife. In his politest English, he asked her, so what do we have here? Marshmallow, explained Meryl, as she placed the pack on the counter. With a loud thud, Tarek nodded. Tamam, Ben Halederim. Asterisk. Reluctantly, Meryl went back to her dusting, but she was soon surprised by the sight of the orange-haired boy lifting 2 nougat bars. After a brief hesitation, she decided to pretend that she hadn't noticed, as long as the boy did not go on to steal anything of more substantial value. She watched her husband engage in merry banter with his customers. In addition to the ginger ale and the marshmallows, the punks bought a pack of cigarettes, matches, and a bag of twiglets. They left the shop, waving goodbye to Meryl, who couldn't help but wave back. Look at them, Meryl grumbled to her husband as soon as they were Alone. Tarek shrugged. What can you do? They are young and hot-blooded. They are young and English, Meryl thought. If one of their children dressed up like that, her husband would have a fit. She, at least, was consistent. At home, on the street or in the shop, she was the same person. Everywhere. She didn't understand how on earth someone could pierce their skin or go around with torn clothes held together with safety pins. Meryl was not going to pretend that she approved of their ways just because they were customers. Oblivious to his wife's thoughts, Tarek tucked into his lunch while standing. Oh, this is quite spicy. Why don't you sit and eat slowly? No time. I need to leave. What do you mean? I cannot wait here. I have soup on the hob. The girls are at home. They'll take care of that, Tarek said, still chewing. Wife, this is urgent. I hit a snag with the distributors. If I don't solve this today, we won't have anything to sell tomorrow. No milk, no butter, no eggs. Even the bread won't be delivered. This elicited a sigh from her. She asked, and where are you going? Oh, to the other end of bloody London. Asterisk. Tarek took the bus as he deeply disliked the tube. It made him uneasy to travel underground. When we die we end up beneath the soil, but what was the point of going there while still alive? He wasn't at all familiar with the part of southwest London to which he was traveling. It was a long way away and the bus was slow, but at least the drivers weren't on strike again. Smoldering with resentment at having to go to such lengths to solve what he regarded as a simple misunderstanding, he planned the conversation he would have with the manager. The man on the phone had accused him of not having a contract with them any longer. Idiot. Tarek took out a folded piece of paper from his inner pocket and checked it. They would be ashamed when he shoved the contract in front of their noses. Perhaps, to make it up to him, they would come up with a special discount. In any case, he had to clear up this mix-up right away. He was a self-made man. And he wasn't going to let some chinless bureaucrat ruin years of sweat, blood and tears. 2 changes of bus and what felt like hours later, Tarek got off at Brixton. Though the afternoon was chilly, a bright sun had come out, as unexpected as a surprise party. There were people on Coldharbour Lane, enjoying the warmth while it lasted. Tarek observed the English children. Their button noses red, their skins pallid, and their clothes always too light. Turkish mothers would swathe their babies and toddlers in cardigan after cardigan, and place a knitted blanket on top of them before taking them outside. English mothers, however, made do with a pair of shorts and a thin anorak. Sometimes the children didn't even wear socks. Why didn't they freeze? For the life of him, Tarek couldn't understand how the ability to deal with the cold could be cultural. He would have liked to stop by a cafe and have some tea, but it wasn't in his budget. He was the only one in the entire Toprak family who had the wisdom and the willpower to save for a rainy day. Khalil was wrapped up in himself. He had his own life in Australia and never asked them if they needed anything. As for Adem, he was hopeless. He gambled, and whatever he won, he handed to that Russian dancer everybody was gossiping about but whom Tarek had still not seen. Doggedly, Tarek ambled past a cobbler's, a religious bookstore, a down-at-heel-looking charity shop, and rows of identical red brick houses. Unlike the main road, there were no pedestrians here, and the place looked deserted. Even the cinema had an eerie air to it, like a relic from another century. It was so old, this city, full of traces of the past. Once Tarek had found pieces of shrapnel when he had dug up the flower beds in his garden. He wondered how Meryl was doing back at the shop. She would have to learn English fast if she was going to help him in there. Perhaps he should get her a pocket dictionary and make sure she memorized at least 5 words every day. All these years his wife had survived in England by speaking only Turkish in her small world, and it had not been a problem. But now he saw clearly that Meryl had to do better than that. After all, Tarek was not getting any younger, and he was now taking care of 2 families, his and his brother's. Yet it wasn't only because of her poor English that Meryl was so terrible with customers. She was too stiff and judgmental, and didn't know how to wait on other people. Odd though it was, this woman who had waited on others her entire life, her husband, her children, her relatives and her neighbors, could not bring herself to serve strangers. While he, who had never tended anyone at home or anywhere else, was good with the clientele. The sun had again disappeared under thick, gray clouds. A storm was coming. Tarek quickened his steps, having finally reached his destination. The meeting was tense. Tarek was not allowed to see the manager, who had some important business to attend to. Disappointed, Tarek showed the deputy his contract, and they showed him a clause that said that the company could ask for certain changes, and even terminate the agreement without advance notification. Tarek threatened to find an alternative supplier, to which they responded with an "as you wish." 20 minutes later he stomped out of the building, feeling down but not defeated. He would have to ask around a bit, consult with other shopkeepers in Hackney and contact another company. The only problem was that he liked to advise others, not to get advice from them. He had a reputation to uphold. Tarek slowed down as he approached the cinema and inspected the poster on the wall outside. The Man from Beyond. Harry Houdini. Though not a fan of cinema, Tarek was interested in the life of the great magician. A man who could break free while hanging upside down in a tank full of water, chained by his ankles and wrists, was a man who merited some attention. So he entered the foyer and took a look around. There was a board on the wall with several photos and reviews. Perusing these, he was disappointed to learn that it was an old silent movie. Black and white, no doubt. Did people still come to see such things? As if in response, the doors at the entrance of the auditorium opened and an English couple walked out. The film had come to an end, and the few members of the audience were leaving. Behind the couple, Tarek caught sight of a woman. She was wending her way towards the exit, her eyes glued to the ground. Inadvertently, Tarek stepped forward as if to apprehend his sister-in-law. He was about to call her name, ask what she was doing here on her own, and offer to go back with her, when he noticed a middle-aged man approaching. Pem. He grabbed her elbow, murmured something inaudible, and gave her a piece of paper, which she accepted with a smile and swiftly put in her pocket. Behind them, Tarek stood perplexed, his mind roaming wildly, his eyes darting back and forth, under a poster that read, "Nothing on earth can hold Houdini a prisoner." The Decision. London, October 1978. On Saturday morning, when Iskender approached the cafe where he was to meet Katie, he was astonished to see Tarek standing outside, pacing up and down, tugging hard at his beard. "Uncle, what you doing here?" "Waiting for you. I stopped by Aladdin's cave and your friends told me you might be here." Uncle Tarek had left the shop during opening hours to search for him? Iskender felt his stomach twist in a knot. "Is everything all right? We need to have a talk. Man to man. Is this about the money you gave me the other day?" Oh, just shut up and listen to me. But I've got to see someone now. Never mind about that, Tarık said, his voice coming out as a croak. Only then did Iskender realize how tense his uncle was, how profusely he was perspiring in his sweater, as if the day were scorching hot. They sat on a nearby garden wall, surrounded by an awkward silence. Tarık lit a cigarette. Iskender wondered if Katie could see them from where she was sitting inside the cafe, and what he would say to her if she came out to ask what on earth was going on. My son, Tarık said. I've some bad news for you. Yeah, I figured. Tarık drew unsteadily on his cigarette, smoke curling in and out of his nostrils, and said, in the quietest voice, it's about your mother. Asterisk. When Iskender entered the cafe, his lips were pursed, his eyes hard, his face as pale as a ghost. He marched towards Katie, who was waiting at their usual table, about to finish a scone and halfway through her second strawberry and banana milkshake. Late again, Katie said with a sigh. Sorry. I've got used to it, you know. But I was hoping today would be different. I thought, for once, you'd care about someone other than you. Iskender took her hand and kissed her fingertips. Why were you so grumpy? Why? As if you don't know why. Katie paused, as if on the verge of saying something else, but then she started to cry. Iskender fished a wad of money out of his pocket and placed it into her palm. This should help a bit. When she didn't make a comment, he added, I got it from my uncle. Never had a chance to give it to you because you didn't want to see me. Well, I told you I had to think this over. On my own. So put that money back, Katie snapped and pulled away as if she had touched a red-hot coal. What do you mean? I've changed my mind, Alex. You've done what? Don't give me that look. It's just, I'm not going to do it. I'm having this baby. Are you out of your fucking mind? Iskender exclaimed. Then he dropped his voice. You're only 16. Your mother will have a heart attack. It's all right. She already knows. You must be kidding. Gripped with a new suspicion, Iskender hissed. Oh, I see. She's the one who's brainwashed you. That's not true. Why do you always get so worked up when I mention her? Because we've talked this through. We made a decision. Together. I went to my uncle, got the money. I found the clinic. I made an appointment. Twice. You kept postponing. Finally we agreed to go ahead. And now the princess says she's changed her mind. Katie started to cry again. But it felt different this time, devoid of self-pity. A tear dropped into her milkshake, leaving a salty drop on the pink surface. This is a child of love. He has a right to be born. That's bollocks, Katie Evans. No, it is not, she protested. I already feel connected to it. Him. Or her, whatever. I'm already 3 months gone. What? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know myself, she said fiercely. But it doesn't matter. When our baby is born, I want you to come to live with me and my mother. Iskender arched his brows. You really believe in this crap, don't you? You've gone barmy. Katie pushed back her chair with a loud scrape, and in a shrill voice full of hurt, and almost unrecognizable, she said, I'm not gonna sit here and let you talk to me like that. I'm outta here. Where the hell are you going? Home. To lie down. Mum says I shouldn't tire myself too much. Iskender slammed the table, the bang so loud a few customers glanced up at them. But Katie didn't seem intimidated. Tell you what, why don't you calm down and think of some names? Have a couple ready for boys and girls. Taking a deep breath, Iskender sat still, his head in his hands, his stomach twisting again. He didn't look up. He could sense the waiter watching this little drama unfold, wondering what he would do now that his girlfriend had stormed out. Right now, he neither wanted to see his friends nor to go home. He bit into what remained of Katie's scone, brushing off the crumbs that fell on his lap. He wished he could just as easily get Uncle Tarek's awful insinuation out of his head, leaving no trace of it behind. Feeling self-conscious, he took out one of the booklets that the orator had given him a while ago, which he had been carrying inside his jacket pocket but never opened. He tried to wade through the verbose sentences, the words sliding by in a jumble of letters. Soon he gave up and called the waiter to order more food than he could possibly eat. After all, he had money. Mother. London, October 1978. Eunice cycled along Richmond Road, the wind tossing the soft curls in his hair. He wore a starched white shirt, buttoned up so tightly that his neck had turned an alarming pink. He did not undo a single button, for he believed that he looked more handsome like this. Besides, the style went well with his leather jacket, which though big for him was the coolest thing he had ever worn. His cheeks burned with shame as he thought about how he had got hold of it. Earlier that morning, Eunice had rolled out of bed with a mission. In the dim light that washed the corridor, he tiptoed to his brother's room. Iskender had had a boxing match the night before and come home late, tired out. He was snoring lightly, curled up in a ball, his head under his pillow. The jacket his mother had bought him for his last birthday was tossed on a chair, its leather so dark and sleek that it shone like black ice. The walls were covered in posters. Star Wars, Muhammad Ali in the ring, Bruce Lee's The Way of the Dragon, Superman flying over Manhattan, James Dean riding a motorcycle, a Union Jack, Kenny Burns confronting Frank Stapleton in Arsenal v. Nottingham Forest. As Eunice glanced around, he felt a pang of envy he didn't know he had in him. Iskender had his own world in here, sports gear, trainers and, most of all, freedom. Nobody meddled in his life. He came home at irregular hours, left whenever he pleased, and seemed to owe no one an explanation. It wasn't fair, and Eunice knew he wasn't the only one who thought so. With a newly found stealth, Eunice put his arms into the leather jacket, feeling both discomfited and thrilled. Discomfited because he was taking something that belonged to his brother, and even though he would return it that evening, it was still theft. He also felt thrilled, if not actually a few inches taller, as he assured himself that Tabiko would like him better this way. The jacket was cool, all the rage. Tabiko would surely see that he was not a little boy anymore. Just then Iskender turned in bed, his head sliding from under the pillow. Eunice held his breath, unmoving. He waited until he was sure his brother was sound asleep again. He remembered the days when Daddy would scold and punish Iskender for every little wrongdoing, but those were long past. Now, Iskender seemed to think he was in charge, always hot under the collar and impossible to reach. If only Mum would stand up to him and make him accept that she was the boss, but she was too distracted and distant. The secret. Hard as he tried, Eunice could not bring himself to hate the man he had seen with Mum. Who was he? How could he make her smile like that when no one else could? Would he try to take her away? But he couldn't ask. He couldn't tell. No one. As he cycled fast and forcefully in his jacket, Eunice decided he would Never get married. It was too messy, too painful. Why did so many people get hitched when so few really wanted, to remain so? Eunice liked living in communes better. The only thing he didn't like about them was the dirt and the dust. Otherwise, he was convinced that squatting resulted in greater happiness. When he grew up, instead of starting a family, he would start a squat with Tabiko. They would have lots of friends and plenty of food in the fridge, and if they had babies, they would raise them all together. Chaining his bike to a wooden fence, Eunice made his way towards the house that belonged to the captain's mother. To his surprise, he found the door ajar. He checked the rooms on the ground floor, the kitchen and the bathroom. The punks were nowhere to be seen. Perhaps they had gone out to buy a few things or to scavenge furniture from the local skips. It was quiet, except for the sounds of a dripping tap and some creaking pipes. Eunice decided to wait in the living room, flicking through a pile of grubby handouts, comic books and flyers, one with the photo of a youth smashing a shop window. Underneath the picture it said, "The state is waging social war against its subjects. You know why? Because that is its function. That's what it means to be a state. Resist the state's ideological apparatuses. Resist their compulsory happiness." Eunice didn't know what ideological apparatuses were, but he had an idea about what the state was: a woman with a large bosom, magnetic personality and impressive bouffant. Whenever Mum wished to praise a woman for her strength and skills, did she not say "Devlet Jibikaden, *" what? He didn't get was why on earth the punks would be upset with such women and their apparatuses. The boy was still inspecting the flyer when he was startled by a blast of music. Almost simultaneously he realized two things: that the noise was coming from upstairs and that it was the sort of catchy pop song the squatters loathed with a vengeance. The punks would never listen to that kind of music. It must be Mrs. Powell, he assumed. But that, too, was odd. Remembering how despondent the woman had seemed when they had met, he couldn't picture the same person listening to such a cheerful song. Curious, Eunice climbed the stairs, now detecting a slightly out-of-tune female voice accompanying the lyrics. He stopped in front of the bedroom and knocked on the door. He waited, knocked again. Getting no answer, he peeked in. There, in the middle of the room was Tabiko, her eyes half closed, her hands clutching a hairbrush, her entire body twisting and twirling as she sang and danced. She had moved the furniture aside to create more space. The curtains were shut tight against the day, penetrated only by splinters of sunlight. In this dim setting she looked lean and tall, and totally unlike herself. Eunice stood rooted to the spot, gawking at the punk priestess he loved. After what felt like an eternity, the song reached the end. "Take a chance on me," Tabiko chanted into her bristly microphone, falling on her knees, shaking her head while her hand drew spirals in the air, a mixture of Swedish pop with Indian dancing. No sooner had the melody subsided than she opened her eyes, aware of a presence in the room. She turned towards the door and gasped, "Oh, Eunice. You scared the hell out of me." "I'm sorry," Eunice mumbled. "Didn't mean to." Tabiko rose, a little unsteadily, attempted a smile, diffident, almost bashful. She placed the hairbrush on the dressing table, turned off the cassette player and opened the curtains, blinking at the light. "What are you doin' here?" "I came to see you." "Found the door open," said Eunice. "What were you listening to?" "Oh, I was just killing time." Mrs. Powell has lots of this sort of pap, she said, tailing off. Where is she? Doctor's appointment. She won't be back till 3. Tabiko dropped her voice to a whisper. I think she's seeing a shrink. Really? She was very sad, said Eunice pensively, but was immediately distracted by another thought. The music you were playing, it was ABBA. Right? How do you know? Mum likes it too, said Eunice, beaming. Well, I don't, really. Not my cup of tea. It's too cheesy. Don't you think? Eunice regarded Tabiko with tender amazement. For the first time since the day they had met, he caught a glimpse of the little girl inside her. He wasn't the only one, he realized, who was trying to appear older and tougher than he actually was. Unaware of his thoughts, Tabiko said, You've got yourself a nice jacket. There. Thanks, Eunice said, but didn't let the subject drop. Do you think you could play that song again and teach me what you were doing? Tabiko smiled puckishly. You want to dance with me, Petal? Though he blushed up to his ears, Eunice didn't backtrack. Yeah, why not? All right, Tabiko conceded. But since you've made such an effort, I'd better put on something nice too. Together they opened the wardrobe and were astonished to find it crammed to overflowing with clothes and accessories, shoes and posh hats. This lady must be spending all her money on clothes, said Tabiko. She has nothing in black, Eunice remarked. But Tabiko, the woman who wore nothing but punk fashion, didn't seem to mind. She looked admiringly at a mauve scarf, a champagne beige skirt, a lilac blouse. There was an evening gown with sparkling sequins, a jacket trimmed with brown fox, a fur coat that would reach down to her ankles, soft to the touch. Tabiko took out a hanger with a long vintage dress on it, satin and taffeta. A purple so pale that it was almost white. It had a nipped-in waist and the thinnest amethyst straps, decorated with 100 gems. You'd look pretty in that, Eunice said. Tabiko shook her head as if she found the idea preposterous. Yet when she spoke, she said, Can you leave me alone for a few minutes? Don't come back till I call you. Eunice waited in the corridor for an eternity. When he was invited back into the room, there was another woman there, someone who had Tabiko's eyes and her tattoos, but other than that nothing in common with her. She had let down her hair and got rid of her makeup. The black lipstick was replaced by pink and the smoky eyeshadow was gone. Instead of torn fishnet stockings, she wore flesh-colored tights, gold platform shoes, diamond drop earrings, a bashful smile on her face, a whiff of perfume in the air. Enchanting. Eunice let out a whistle in the way Iskender had taught him. You look. He dithered, realizing no word was powerful enough to describe what he was seeing. So he ventured, You look like the state. Tabiko laughed. I am the state, she said, opening her arms wide. Then she grabbed 2 hairbrushes, one for herself, one for Eunice. She turned on the cassette player and, as the music began, they sashayed on stage. Hand in hand, all smiles. Thousands had come to listen to them tonight. All tickets had been sold out weeks before, many more were waiting outside the concert hall. Light as a feather, cool in his leather jacket, Eunice played the piano, the guitar, the drums, the saxophone. She sang and danced, flapping her skirts. At each refrain they stood back to back, leaning against each other. The audience went crazy. When the music was over and they were both panting on the floor, Tabiko put her arms around Eunice. The other day you were asking me about secrets. Well, our love for ABBA will be our secret. Promise me you can keep it. That afternoon Eunice learned things about Tabiko he had never imagined. could be true. Still clad in her Abba dress, she smoked a joint and confessed to him that she hadn't ditched Toby, her ex-boyfriend. It had been the other way round. He had left her, just like that, shattering her heart to pieces. Then she had met the captain, but she didn't love him, though she couldn't let him go either. She had been bolder in the past, but with every passing day she was becoming more dependent, clingy. She said it was all because she had an incurable Electra complex. She equated the men she loved with her father, and still competed with her mother. Then she showed Eunice a short poem entitled Mother. But, just as Eunice had begun to read it, they heard footsteps downstairs. Mrs. Powell had returned. Tabiko panicked. "Oh, no, shit." "Don't worry," Eunice said. "I'll go and distract her while you change." Then he put the poem in the pocket of his jacket and scrambled downstairs. Asterisk. In the evening, at the dinner table, Iskender shot one menacing glance after another at Eunice, but refused to ask where his jacket had been all day. After supper he announced he was going out for a walk. He would go to see the boys and play snooker for a while. He needed that to collect his thoughts. Despite his mother's objection, he left, paying her no attention. Since the talk he had had with his uncle, he had been treating his mother frostily, though he had still not confronted her. The evening was crisp, nippy. Iskender pulled up the collar of his jacket and thrust his hands in his pockets. There was something in his pocket, a piece of paper. He took it out and read it by the next street lamp. With a simple swoop of his hand, Iskender crumpled the paper and tossed it into a rubbish bin. Somebody was playing games with him all night long. He tried to figure out who it could be, and, when he couldn't, returned to the last two lines of the message, which went round and round in his head. Mother lies, mother deceives. She is not who she says she is. Shrewsbury Prison, 1991. Slow day. Painfully sluggish. Work in the laundry until 11:30. Return for lunch. Read a book in the afternoon, listen to Zishan blabber on about love and harmony. At 4 o'clock we are all locked up. Half an hour later Officer McLaughlin appears. "It seems like you're gonna have a visitor soon," he says. "Who is it? Why don't you see it for yourself?" "I've only ever had visits from Esma, and even she stopped coming this year. But I'm surprised that Officer McLaughlin has approved this. Given my recent track record, he could have vetoed it straight away. I spend the rest of the evening brooding like a bird on a nest. Then it finally dawns on me. Officer McLaughlin knows that whoever it is that's coming to see me could throw me off balance. He's relying on that. I have a protective shell round myself no one gets through. But there are a few people who can shatter my nerves. Only a few. They can get through my armor the way a ghost walks through walls." "You worried," says Zishan. "Regardless of whether it's a question or a statement, I don't deny it. Yeah, it's bloody stressful not knowing who's gonna come to see me tomorrow." Zishan says, "We never know what comes tomorrow, but we always start new day, hopeful." I'm not in the mood to listen to his nonsense. So I lie on my bunk and shut myself off from the outside world. It feels like another bad day. I've had many of those in my life. But there is one day that was worse than them all, the morning after. The morning after committing a crime, you awake from a bottomless night. Somewhere in your brain there is a signal, a red light flashing. You try to ignore it. There is a chance, however slight, that it was all a dream. You hold on to that chance, like a falling man. who grabs at the first rope he sees. A minute goes by. An hour. You lose count of time. Until, suddenly, it hits you. The rope is not tied to anything, and its end is loose. You tumble into reality head first. There I was on Lavender Grove, a knife in my hand. I heard the screams. Shrill, unending. Somebody was howling. Oddly, it sounded like my mother. But it couldn't have been her, for she was lying on the ground, bleeding. Echoes growing inside my brain. I looked at my left hand. My stronger hand. But it had gone slack, as if it had been attached to my body only temporarily and now belonged to someone else. I tossed the knife under a parked car. If I could, I would have thrown away my hand. I began to run. My jacket was splattered with blood. I can't explain why nobody stopped me, but they didn't. I darted down alleyways, through back gardens, without the slightest idea where I was going. I must have crossed streets, bumped into people, frightened dogs. I don't remember. The next half hour is blank. But I remember finding a phone box. I rang Uncle Tarek. I told him what I had done. There was an awkward silence. I thought he hadn't heard me. So I repeated myself. I told him I had punished Mum for her illicit affair. From now on she'd never do such a thing again. I said her wound wasn't too bad, but it would take some time to heal. I had stabbed her once on the right side of her chest. That would show her how grave her sin was. It would give her time to think about her mistake, to repent. And the man would be scared out of his wits. He would leave us alone. Our family's honor was cleansed. What have you done, son? His voice sounded strangled. This is terrible. I was taken aback. BB. But we TTT Alk Edub Ub OU TTT This. Surely we did not, my uncle said. The man who had told me everything and then impressed upon me over and over again that I had to do something and do it soon, had vanished into thin air. I was stunned. Iskender, son, you have to turn yourself in. I'll tell the police this is exactly what I told you when you rang me. You cannot run from the law. Suddenly I had the strangest suspicion that Uncle Tarek had rehearsed this moment. Had he been waiting for this? Preparing his speeches. What he would tell me on the phone, what he would share with the old Bill, what he would declare in court. He was prepared for it all. Son, are you there? Tell me where you are. I hung up. I took off my jacket and dumped it in a rubbish bin. Then I went to Katie's house on Albion Drive. I had walked her home many times, but I had never gone inside. I rang the bell. To my relief it was she who opened the door. Alex, what a surprise, she said. A smile bloomed on her face. Oh, sweetie, I knew you were going to come. Katie ushered me in. She said her mother would be thrilled to learn I had decided to come to live with them. She hugged me, her belly hard and round between us. She didn't look 4 months pregnant to me. More like she had swallowed a ball. I asked Katie to show me the bathroom. I washed my hands. The me in the mirror was no different than the one I had seen on other days. I half expected there to be something unusual in my face, in my eyes. but there wasn't. I washed my hands again, scrubbing hard. The soap smelled of roses. I opened the cupboard and found some bleach. On the bottle there was a pretty housewife, her smile whiter than clouds. I poured the bleach on my hands. There were cuts in my palms. It hurt like hell. I kept scrubbing. There was something under my fingernails. Dirt? Paint? Blood? It just wouldn't wash off. Katie came in to ask if everything was all right. She hugged me, checking the couple in the mirror. Me, her, our baby. She took it in with pride. I noticed she had the same smile as the bleach ladies. A sense of achievement. She turned off the water. You're clean enough for me, love. We went into the living room. Katie's mom was sitting in an armchair by the window, waiting. She was wearing a wrap dress. One of those silky things you see on TV. Royal blue. You could see her breasts. She had freckles all across her chest, like specks of nutmeg. Her hair was freshly combed. Her lips painted red. Her head could have dined out in a posh restaurant, but the rest of her seemed in a domestic mood. I tried to concentrate on her face. I tried not to glance below her head. Mrs. Evans offered me tea in bone china cups. Warm fruit scones. We ate in silence. There were framed photos on the walls. Dozens of them. I saw Katie's father in some of them. He didn't strike me as the kind of man who would stray. Mrs. Evans was watching my every move. I had a feeling she was checking under my fingernails. I hid my hands. Alex, my daughter tells me you want to name the baby Maggie if it's a girl and Tom if it's a boy. I turned to Katie. She avoided my eyes. Yeah, I guess. Afterwards, Mrs. Evans asked me if I believed I would make a responsible father. I said I didn't know, but that I would do my best. Sometimes one's best is just not good enough, she said. It sounded like something she'd heard on TV. Or like something someone had told her in the past. She said she would help us, a temporary scheme, of course, until we got on our feet. She would do this for her grandchild. The first. She smiled. Her teeth were pearly white and perfect. At night, Katie told me we had to sleep in separate rooms. I would have to take the sofa in the living room. She said it was just for now. Soon we would get married and then we would have the same bed. Forever. She brought me clean sheets, a pillowcase. Slowly, she pulled up her sweater. Her breasts were swollen, her nipples dark rings. I could see the veins, blue, big, jutted. She asked me to put my ear on her belly. I didn't hear anything for a while. Then I felt a movement, like someone stretching from a deep sleep. 1, 2, 4 times. It was like magic. I wondered if Mom had made Dad listen to her belly when she was pregnant with me. I pushed Katie away. I said, sorry, I need to sleep. Of course, darling. When she left me alone, I stretched out, looking around. Net curtains, cushions with flower designs, swirling wallpaper, an ornate vase on the mantelpiece, a grandfather clock. I thought I would never sleep, but as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was dead to the world. I woke up at dawn. Katie was standing by my side. Her face pale, her eyes wide open. Alex, she said. There are 2 policemen at the door. I got up and held her head between my palms. I kissed her. Her mouth tasted salty. The taste of panic. They're asking for you. We shuffled out into the corridor. Katie's mom was standing by the door in her nightgown. There were traces of cream on her face. Her lower lip quivered. She pulled her daughter close, as if I had a contagious disease. I saw the lights of a police car in the background. There were 2 officers. One of them looked like James Callahan. Only he didn't have glasses. They hadn't seen me yet. I asked Katie to tell them I was getting dressed. The decision to escape was not a conscious one. I just did it. I went to the kitchen, opened the door, sneaked into the garden and jumped over the fence and then over the next one. While Katie was talking to the police, I was already out of her road and into the next. The last day of November 1978. I was about to change my mind when I saw her turn the corner. She had been shopping, bags in her hands. She walked unhurriedly, taking her time. It made my blood boil. I had forbidden her to leave the house. She slowed her steps, staring at a street musician, her back turned to me. I studied her profile. She was smiling. A surge of resentment rose inside me. Had I not told her that she was forbidden to go out? That she could not wear dresses that showed her legs? And here she was defying my rules, making fun of me. I followed her. She stared at a shop window, obviously in no rush to go home. I thought she might be waiting to meet her lover, but no such thing happened. When we approached our street, she tripped, dropping her purse. An old khaki thing I had never seen before. As she was picking it up, she noticed me behind her. Iskender, she whispered, as if my name were a secret. Iskender Toprak. The Stick and the Bundle. London, October 1978. Finding the orator was more difficult than Iskender had thought. He visited several cafes, made a couple of phone calls, but got nowhere. It dawned on him how little he knew the man. All these months it had always been the orator who had sent a message requesting a meeting and never the other way round. He had no idea where the orator lived or what he did in his spare time. He remembered him saying he was a student at some polytechnic, but what exactly he studied was a mystery, like everything else. But, through a friend of a friend, he did manage to find him in a dingy martial arts studio on Brick Lane. He was surrounded by half a dozen young men in shorts, sitting close together on floor mats, like pigeons huddled under the gables. Some of them had stains of perspiration on their chests, towels around their necks. It looked as if they had just finished a hard session of exercise and had gathered to discuss something substantial before heading to the showers. When they saw Iskender approach, they fell quiet, eyeing him with a distrust they felt no need to hide. "It's okay," said the orator with a wink at the others. "I know him." Iskender didn't like the wink or the tone, but he greeted them all the same. A tilt of his head, the slightest curl of his lip and a short, "Hey." Briskly, the orator leaped to his feet and placed his right hand on his heart. "Salaam alaikum, brother. Would you like to join us?" "No, thanks. I need to be somewhere else. I came to say hi and return the tapes you gave me last time." Mumbling something inaudible to his friends, the orator came forward. Iskender noticed how small the man was when stripped of his winter coat and sweaters. Narrow shoulders, bony wrists, slightly bowed legs. "You didn't need to come all this way for that." "It's all right," said Iskender, still not sure why he was there. "You want to talk?" "Oh. 'Kay. A couple of minutes." The two walked to a quiet corner and sat down. Across from them sat an array of weightlifting equipment. They watched a short, thick-set man huff and puff under more weight than he could handle. A film of sweat on his face, red blotches on his cheeks, barely any strength left in his arms. With a sideways glance at the orator, Iskender murmured, "Didn't know you work out. What do you do?" "Oh, I do taekwondo. I'm not much of a fighter, though. Not my thing. Really. I'm a man of ideas." "Then why do you come here?" "Because people like us ought to know how to defend ourselves." "Did you hear what happened yesterday in North End?" "Skinheads, 4 of them. They attacked a Bengali shopkeeper. 4 against 1. Pretty equal, eh?" "Hadn't heard about that one." "They pushed him down and shaved his head. They drew their idiotic symbols on his skull. The poor chap was so terrified he got sick. His wife cries all the time." He paused for a breath. "Well, at least you know how to defend yourself." Iskender nodded, though he wasn't sure if that was why he had started to box. He didn't do it in order to fight enemies, imaginary or real. He did it because, unlike many other sports that were staged and phony, boxing was genuine, the true thing. Boxing was a one-to-one reflection of life. You were on your own in the ring. No teamwork. No substitutes waiting on the sidelines. Every man for himself. The good and the bad, the sublime and the base, the greed and the grace. It was all there. If you wanted to know a man's true character, all you had to do was watch him box. The orator said, "You're a terrific boxer. A natural." "How do you know?" "You've never seen me." "I have, actually. I watched you twice on the sly. You don't dodge risky fights and your defense is pretty strong. It's almost like you know where the next punch is coming from. That's a rare talent, one you have to be born with." Not knowing whether to feel annoyed or proud, Iskender said nothing. The orator paused briefly, his eyes never leaving Iskender. "Alex, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Would you consider teaching us how to fight? The brothers could benefit from your know-how." Iskender exhaled, thinking. "Dunno, man. I like to fight alone." All at once, the orator's face was set in a frown. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. You're your own man. I can see that. No strings attached. That's the way you like it. But don't forget that great fighters are great inside and out. If you had stronger values, you'd be invincible." "I don't want to be invincible." "Then what do you want?" demanded the orator, with absolute authority. In his gaze, naked challenge in his tone. Having never asked himself this question, Iskender had no answer in store. "Why did you come here looking for me?" the orator pressed. "Because one part of you knows the truth. You need to belong somewhere. You need a purpose in life, a new direction. Join us." Iskender struggled to think of something to say that would let him off the hook, but nothing came. He unzipped his coat, pulling out the tapes he had borrowed. "Did you listen to them?" "Yeah." This elicited a grunt from the orator. "You never finished the booklets I gave you?" "None of them." "And now the tapes, is that too much to ask?" "Look, my brother and sister have the tape recorder all the time, okay? But I did listen to bits and pieces. There were a couple of things I enjoyed. Like the brotherhood part. One stick breaks easily but a bundle is unbreakable. But, I dunno, man. I guess I've too much going on right now. My girlfriend is in a jam. And I need to take care of some family matters. The orator didn't comment. He knew Iskender was the type of boy who would tell more when asked less. What you said earlier struck a chord with me, Iskender said. I mean, if your parents are in the wrong, you've got to stand up against them, right? Yes, but don't get confused. What I meant was, if your parents don't know God, you've got to choose God over them. Because God is bigger than your parents. But beware. If you don't know God yourself and if you disobey your parents, you'll be floating in the air. No principles to hold you up, man. Let's say, someone close to me. Iskender pulled his zip up to his chin. I mean, hypothetically, say, someone in my family is sinning. I'm trying to find out what my duty is. The orator stiffened, sensing the gravity of the question. He scrutinized Iskender with brightened interest, only now noticing a nervous twitch at the corner of his mouth, and his fingernails, each chewed to the quick. He asked, who, for instance? Let's say, my mother. There was an uneasy pause before the orator remarked, well, talk to your father. It's his duty more than yours. But if he is not in, then it's down to you. I'd never let my mother or sister or wife shame me. But what can I do? Asked Iskender. I'm not going to tell you what to do unless you trust me fully. You understand what I'm saying? Come and join us, be part of something bigger. Man. That's the right way. There's the answer to all your questions. I'll think about it. Yeah, go ahead, mull it over. But don't take too long. 'Cause something might happen while you're doing your thinking. Asterisk. That same evening Iskender stood by the gates of a club he had never visited before. He had anticipated this scene in his mind so many times that it felt curiously familiar. No sooner had he taken a step forward than he was stopped by a bodyguard twice his size. Slate blue suit, mirrored sunglasses. Even though the sun had long gone from the skies, bald as an egg, a neck so short and thick that it looked as if his head had been mounted on his shoulders. How old are you, lad? Old enough, said Iskender, determined not to be intimidated. That's not an answer in my book. I dunno which book that is, but I need to go in. More astonished than annoyed, the bodyguard took off his sunglasses. His eyes were too small and too close for his face. Impossible to read. Are you testing my patience, kid? Because I warn you, it's already spent. Iskender felt his cheeks heat up. The bodyguard could knock him out if he wanted to, and yet, somehow, he felt that the man was not as threatening as he seemed. All bark and no bite. It was only a hunch, but when it came to street fights, his hunches were usually right. Well, I'm looking for my father. Is that a crime? A shadow of curiosity crossed the bodyguard's face. And does your father work here? No. But he shags a woman who does. Sucking in a long, deep breath, the bodyguard said, and you? We're hoping to be introduced to this lady, I take it? No, man. Why would I want that? Just asking. How about your father, then? You've a bone to pick with him? I'm not looking for trouble. I just need to talk to my old man, is all. The bodyguard put his sunglasses back on. 3 minutes. Not a second. More. You go inside, find your father and bring him out. If you're not back here in that time, I'll come inside and break your legs. Got it? That's the ticket, man, thanks. As Iskender strode into the club, he thrust his hand into his pocket, feeling the glass flask there. It was a miracle the bodyguard hadn't searched him. Liquid acid. Practical and effective. All he needed to do was to aim it at her face. His father would not want to see her anymore. Never again would any man desire her. How many times had he imagined this moment? He would march into the club, which would be noisy, smoky, crowded and suffocating, and head to the bar to get himself a drink. Whiskey probably. On the rocks. That would be the right choice. He would finish it in 2 gulps and then, his throat still burning, sneak backstage. He would stride along the narrow corridors that reeked of sweat and perfume. It wouldn't take him long to find her room. He would knock on the door that said Roxana but would not wait for an answer before going in. "Who are you?" she would say. A trace of panic creeping into her voice. Her face would be heavily painted, her lips red as blood, her breasts showing through her robe. "I'm the son of the man you stole from his family." That sentence changed each time Iskender envisaged the scene. Sometimes he replaced it with "You don't know me, but I know you too well." At other times it would be "I'm the one who should ask that question." "Who do you think you are, to ruin our family?" The woman's reaction would also vary. Mostly she would be embarrassed, apologetic. But sometimes she would make a scene, her nerves whittled to shreds. He imagined a stiletto hurled at the wall. A champagne glass shattered. Iskender had considered each option. If she were to get aggressive, hysterical, he would produce the bottle in his pocket. If she were remorseful, he would take it easy, giving her another chance. At other times in the fantasy she would throw herself on the floor/chaise long/sofa/carpet, tears of shame rolling down her cheeks. Among all the possible scenarios, this was Iskender's favorite. "Oh, I didn't know he was married," she would say, sobbing. "I didn't know he had a family. He never told me." In this version Iskender would not take out the bottle. Instead he would console her. She would give her word never to see Adem again, and even when she turned old and grey, she would honor her promise. His mind buzzing with such thoughts, Iskender scrutinized the club, and was surprised to see only a handful of people around, most of whom were staff. Too early for the punters. He walked to the bar, which was redolent with a musky sweet aroma from hundreds of drinks over the years. A large oval back mirror with neon lights, a sleek, shiny, wooden countertop. Iskender allowed his finger to move along the scripts and symbols incised on the hard surface. The bartender, an Afro-Caribbean man with tightly braided hair, was drying a glass. He inspected the customer with a wry glint in his eyes. "How old are you?" "Old enough," said Iskender. Can I see your ID, Mr. Old Enough?" "Hey, if I'm here it means I'm old enough to be here. Otherwise that Hulk at the entrance would never have let me in, right?" "Nice try," said the bartender. "I'll give you a glass of water for that. Sparkling. No ice. And that's the most you'll be getting from me." Iskender sipped his water, and stood in front of the stage, observing the curtains on both sides. Was she back there? Should he go find her now? Again, he touched the bottle in his pocket. It felt both cold and warm under his fingers. He was still contemplating his next move, steeling himself for the encounter ahead, when he noticed the bodyguard looking for him. The man tapped his watch, unsmiling, unyielding. Iskender finished his water, thanked the bartender and shuffled out. Nothing was going as planned. He waited on the pavement, his mind spinning. After what seemed like an Eternity, he noticed someone coming in his direction. His hair uncombed, his head lowered, his step apprehensive, as if he were afraid that his legs would give way. He didn't notice the boy as he passed by. "Dad." Adem stopped and turned around. A smile bloomed on his face, easy and genuine, but it was quickly replaced by a darker expression. "Iskender. Has something happened to your brother or sister?" "No. They're fine, really." For a moment Adem seemed relieved. But after relief came suspicion. And after suspicion, irritation. "You shouldn't be here." This, too, was something Iskender had failed to anticipate. He had expected his father to be uncomfortable upon seeing him, perhaps unsettled. But anger was not in the picture. Iskender's face was impassive before he snapped. "And neither should you." Adem's mouth turned down at the corners, his eyes blazing. "Watch your mouth, lad. You can't talk to me like that." "I want you to come home, father," he said. The insinuation was not lost on Adem. "Go back to your mother before I break your bones." "What is it with my bones today? Everybody wants to break 'em." They stood in silence for a while. Father and son retreated into their thoughts while holding each other's gaze, challenging the other to speak first. It was at that moment that an uncanny feeling overtook Adem, as though he were staring into a mirror, watching his younger self. His boy was like him, but with more privileges, and none of the anxiety and passivity that had cost him dearly. "I'll return when the time comes," Adem said finally. "And when will that be?" "When you get tired of that slut." The slap was immediate. Iskender seemed less bowled over by his father's reaction than by what had come out of his own mouth. He couldn't believe he had spoken like that. It was against everything in his upbringing. Having witnessed the slap, the bodyguard angled towards them. "Hey! You two! Take it easy or I'll ring the police." "It's okay," mumbled Iskender as though to himself. There was an obscure look in his eyes, a sparkle that wasn't there before. Calmly, too. Calmly, he turned to his father and said, "If you hit me again, I'll hit you back. My punch is stronger." Adem paled. He felt a pain in his chest so sharp that for a second he couldn't breathe. It wasn't only the shock, the sorrow, and the shame of having his son insult him in front of strangers. There was something deeper, more painful. A belated recognition. Now he saw that this was what he himself should have done many years ago. When his own Baba beat him, and kept doing so even after Adem had become taller than him, this is what he, too, should have done. It was an excruciating regret. Taking a step towards Iskender, Adem slapped him again, harder. That was when the most frightening thing happened. Howling like a wounded animal, Iskender rammed himself into the wall of the club. He hit his forehead. Once, twice, 3 times. Thud, thud, thud. Adem tried to control him, but to no avail. "Don't touch me, Iskender," bellowed. It was the bodyguard who pulled him away from the wall. But the need to hurt was so engulfing that Iskender couldn't stop. He sank his teeth into the guard's shoulder until he drew blood. He stomped on the man's foot and shot his head back, hitting the bodyguard's chin with a loud dull thump. The man was expecting none of this. He lost his composure, and his face flashed crimson. He attacked back. Adem tried to intervene. "No, no. Please, don't. He's my son." Other people clustered around. Customers, waiters, a few dancers. Among them was Roxana, watching the scene with wide eyes and a heavy heart. When they were finally pulled apart, the bodyguard was trembling. "I don't want to see you two here again. You hear me? If I see you around, I swear to God I'll hit you so hard you won't know what day it is. Come on, let's go." Adem pulled his son by the arm, gently but firmly. They walked in silence for a few minutes, and once they were out of sight, sat on the pavement under a street lamp. Iskender's breath came in ragged puffs as he tasted the blood in his mouth. "Mother is seeing someone," he said, bone-weary. "What?" "You heard me," said Iskender. "You need to return home and fix things." Adem took out a cigarette, lit it and offered it to his son. Seeing the surprise on Iskender's face, he said, "Come on. I already know that you smoke." He lit another cigarette for himself. They smoked side by side. The night felt chilly, drab but full of possibilities. Does she love him? Iskender could not believe his ears. "Dad, what are you saying?" Adem put his hand on his son's knee. "Look, I know you don't understand. 10 years ago, I would have been mad as hell. I would have done anything to stop it. But now I'm old enough to know I can't make your mother love me. She asked me several times for a divorce. I've ignored her request, but it was the right thing to do." Hearing the word love from his father's lips astonished Iskender. True. There had been times in the past when he had questioned how and why his parents had got together, but this was no longer about love. Adem was his father, the head of the family. Not a romantic teenager, but father. Listen, there was a headman once who told me that a man's love is a reflection of his character. I never understood what he meant, but now I know. He let the smoke curl out of his nostrils. "You think I'm not angry at your mother?" "I am. But I'm angrier with myself. We never loved each other. It was so wrong, our marriage. But I don't regret it because you were born, and Esma, and Eunice." Then something happened that Adem did not take seriously at the time. But that years later he would remember vividly, and always with a piercing regret. Iskender flicked his cigarette, watching its feeble light arc against the darkness surrounding it, and said, "If you don't take care of this matter, then I will." The Rope. London, October 1978. Quickening her step, Pem approached the cinema she knew so well by now. The click of her low heels against the pavement was steady, lulling. She did not look up or around, keeping her gaze focused on the ground, as if she were a child again and this was a game. If she did not see the world, perhaps the world would not see her. She deliberately arrived late each time, reaching the cinema 5 or 10 minutes after the film had started. It lessened the chances of their being seen together. Lately, though, she had grown a bit less cautious. On 2 occasions, she had even walked with him on the street, once to buy some flowers, another time to listen to a street musician. She was still anxious, as always. But now there was an urge inside her, a voice dying to come out, to be heard. Having never experienced anything like this before, she didn't know what to do with this new audaciousness that was, and wasn't, a part of her. A few threads from Pem's grey coat caught in the door as she hurriedly pushed it open. She entered the building, inhaling the odor from filthy ashtrays, and the familiar smells from the refreshment bar, buttered popcorn, crisps and sweets. The swirls on the stained carpet made her dizzy if she stared at them for too long. She found it all strangely comforting. No sooner had she stepped into the foyer than a sense of lightness descended upon her. She felt calm, sheltered. The earth stopped moving, prompting her to do the same, and without a worry for the future she allowed the moment to surround Her. The young usher at the entrance to the auditorium checked her ticket, then opened the doors and signaled for her to follow him. The film had started. It was half dark inside, bathed in the silver light that bounced off the screen at each bright scene. As she followed the usher's torchlight, Pim took a quick look round. There were 10 or 15 people inside, more than usual. For a fleeting second, she felt a tension that hadn't been there a moment ago. Elias always sat in the same place. The middle row, the middle seat. Once someone else had occupied the seat, a glitch that had caused Pim to go and sit next to a stranger. "Hello, darling," the man had said, grinning. Horrified, Pim had leaped to her feet and moved to the front row, where Elias was waiting for her, blissfully unaware. Now, careful not to trip, Pim passed by one empty row after another. She noticed an elderly couple holding hands, engrossed in the film. She tried to imagine Elias and herself in the same position, old, frail but still in love. Even the dream didn't feel real. As she kept edging her way forward, in her distractedness, she did not notice the person sitting in the back row. He had hit himself, having slid down in his seat, his head tilted to the side, merely a shadow. He sat there in the darkness, watching, waiting. The caramel torchlight stopped at row G. There in the middle, sitting on his own, his eyes shaded by an expectation he didn't allow himself to indulge, was Elias. Thanking the usher, Pim glided into her seat, her breath quick. Elias turned, smiling. He reached out to her, his forefinger running along her fingertips, like a blind man recognizing his beloved from a touch. He squeezed her hand tenderly. She squeezed back. Over the course of these past months, they had mastered a language with lots of gestures and not many words. Slowly, he leaned forward and planted a kiss on the inside of her wrist, inhaling the smell of her skin. Pim's heart pounded in her chest. She still didn't look at him. That, too, felt like a childhood game. If she didn't see him, he wouldn't be visible, and if he weren't visible, perhaps he would never disappear. Together they watched the good, the bad and the ugly. She had not seen the film before. He had. It was their first film with sound. The week before, the cinema had finished its run of silent movies and launched a new series of classic spaghetti westerns. Having already agreed to meet there and being fond of the place, they had seen no reason to change plans. Besides, Elias assumed that the film, with its laconic characters and few words, would be equally easy for her to follow. In just a few seconds, Pim found herself drawn into the film. As Blondie, Tuco and Angel Eyes engaged in a maze of conflicts, inciting and dodging all kinds of danger, she watched the story unfold, taking sides. When the Bat inquired, "If you work for a living, why do you kill yourself?" Working, she lowered her eyelids, considering the sentence until its meaning hit her fully. When the Bad scoffed at the Good, telling him that, in fact, they were not that different, she couldn't help but flinch. Lately she had begun to contemplate the meaning of good and bad as never before. It was her sister's letters that had compelled her. Her twin was the respectable one. Virtuous and pure, unwavering. That left her as the bad, the unchaste. But it had not always been like this. How fast things changed. Nothing was permanent, everything evolving in a constant flux. When Tuco sat on a donkey with a noose around his neck, about to be hanged, a flash of dread crossed Pim's face. She turned her head sideways. For a fraction of a second she thought she saw someone in the back row observing her, but when she checked again it was too dark to be sure. She then heard the ugly say, "People with ropes around their necks don't always hang." Pem closed her eyes. For a sickening moment she was in a different place, a different time. "Hey, are you all right, sweetheart? You seem to have drifted off," Elias said in her ear, and added in a playful whisper, "It's just a film." She nodded. It was only a film, she knew. In real life, people with ropes around their necks always hanged. Asterisk. They were 8 sisters, ages ranging from 9 to 20. The eldest of them was named Hedai, a gift. That was what she was, a present from the Creator, the firstborn, much treasured, even if a girl. She had a heart-shaped face, sharp nose, large almond eyes, gray like storm clouds. As the eldest in a family with many siblings and a meager income, she spent her childhood playing with real babies instead of toys. Hedai was always cleaning, cooking, scrubbing, washing, feeding and rocking the younger ones. Her palms were henna'd, her wrists adorned with bracelets, fake gold, but nothing looked fake on her. Pem did not remember hearing her complain. Even once, even though everyone else seemed to be whining all the time. Somehow Hedai had accepted her role, her unending responsibilities. Aging before her time, a girl woman. Upon Naze's death she was her natural replacement, caring for them all, but especially for the twins, who were still young. When Burzo remarried, his daughters saw the woman as Papa's wife. But never as more than that, for their mother was none other than Hedai. "I'll never get married," she was fond of saying. "I'll look after my sisters until all of them have tied the knot. I'll die a spinster." These words, heartening as they were for the twins to hear, did not turn out to be true. In the winter of 1957 Hedai started seeing someone. A medical man, an inoculator, appointed by the government to provide vaccines against tuberculosis, distrusted by most villagers, hated by all children. How it had all started, how they had met, 12-year-old Pem would never learn, and the woman she was today could not construe. Love was an illness, invigorating and uplifting, but a malady nonetheless. Suddenly Hedai was bolder than ever, indomitable. Even their stepmother seemed to fear her, unable to boss her around any longer, uncomfortable in her presence. For Hedai was resolute. The girl who had never had a moment for herself was now eager to make up for lost time. On a cloudless night, when the moon was a golden sickle in the sky, she eloped with this man, whom she barely knew. The next morning there was no one around to give inoculations. The children of the village rejoiced. The remaining vaccines were thrown into the Euphrates, erasing all traces of the stranger who had intruded into their lives. Injected them with his ways and, in the end, stolen one of their number. Pem remembered the grief that engulfed the house, empty and heavy at once. It felt as if they were mourning a death. But Hedai was now worse than dead. No one asked about her, at least not aloud, her name deemed a profanity. Their stepmother was particularly vindictive. "May God burn you in hell," she swore, seeing imaginary Hedais everywhere. Suddenly everything that had been fomenting inside her, her shame at not being able to give a baby to a man who had married her solely to have a son, her agony at being as barren as a desert, and her resentment at having to take care of another woman's 8 children, erupted into a sharp, sour fury at Hedai. Burzo, however, was oddly silent. His eyes had sunk into their sockets. His head was low, brooding. He barely went to the tea house anymore. Sitting at home all day long, withdrawn and sulking, smoking cigarettes with an inch of ash dangling at the ends. It was a harsh winter. 4 months passed. One late afternoon in early spring, Hedai returned. She should have sent a message to see if her family were prepared to accept her. Instead, she had taken a bus and come back, just like that. The medical man had turned out to be a coward. Even though he had promised to marry her, at the slightest opposition from his family, he had changed his mind, abandoning her in the big city on her own. Hedai regretted what had happened. She was also frightened. But this was the only home she knew. She had no other place to go. Upon her arrival, finding the door open, she shuffled in. Neither Burzo nor his wife was in the house. But the twins were, and the moment they saw Hedai they yelled in joy, clapping their hands, celebrating the return of their mother-sister. They ran rings round her, like planets orbiting the sun. Yet Hedai was different. Insecure, reserved, tongue-tied. Drawing her knees together, keeping her eyes cast down, she sat on the edge of the divan. In her own house she was like a guest who wasn't sure of being welcome. After a while their stepmother lumbered in, carrying a huge pile of fleece wool on her back. Her back had hunched, and her cheeks were flushed from the effort. She didn't notice Hedai at first, but she instantly detected the awkward silence in the room, and the twins' discomfort. "What's going on? Did a cat come here and get your tongues?" She had barely finished the sentence when she spotted the girl in the corner. The runaway. The bringer of shame. Dropping her load, the woman stood across from the girl, almost transfixed. Then she took a step forward and made a gesture with her lips as if spitting on the floor. Hedai paled. In the evening, when all the sisters were at home, nobody dared to speak to Hedai, lest they upset their stepmother. Nobody offered her tea or food. The sisters didn't eat much either. Several hours into this discomfort, Burzo appeared at the door. As soon as he walked in, they sensed that he already knew. He had heard the news, and yet he had taken his time, listening to what the other men said. He had been in no haste to reach home. Hedai sprang to her feet, running to kiss his hand, but her father held back. "I have no sons," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "God gave me none. I've never understood why he did that. Until today." The girls held their breaths, listening. Hedai's shoulders slouched. "Now I know the reason," Burzo said. "If I had a son, I'd ask him to kill you and clean our family's good name. And your brother would go to jail. Because of you. He would spend his life rotting amidst 4 walls." Hedai didn't weep, wail, or ask for forgiveness. She kept her eyes glued to a spider on the windowsill and remained motionless, wordless. Into the ensuing silence Burzo said, "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad I don't have a son." In the evening, as the sisters got ready to sleep on bed mats on the floor, they could hear their father and his wife arguing in the other room, though they could not make out the words. The girls, with their hair unbraided and dressed in thick flannel nightgowns, looked at Hedai, still perched on the divan. Quietly, Pem stood up. "Where are you going?" Jamila whispered. "She must be hungry." "Are you mad?" "Papa and Stepma are not yet asleep. They'll find it out." With a shrug, Pem tiptoed across the room into the kitchen and came back with some bread, cheese, and water. Under her sister's eyes she carried them to Hedai, who accepted only the water. The next morning Burzo had his breakfast later than usual. As he sipped his black tea and chewed his flat bread, the girls waited. "I'm going to the tea house," he said, without meeting anyone's eye. Upon hearing this, Pem felt a rush of panic. Their father had not entered the tea house since the day Hedai had run away. What had changed? Now to make him go there? What will I do with her under my roof? Their stepmother grumbled. You know what to do, he said, and said no more. Soon after, their stepmother, a grim look on her broad face, told them they would all have to leave. A lot of work to do, carpets to weave. As her sisters put on their boots and coats, Pem lingered behind, seized by a harrowing sense of dread. Something was happening, and yet she could not pin it down. Shortly before they left the house, she saw her stepmother carry in the large, round, brass tray used for all their meals. The woman spread the dining cloth on the floor, set up the wooden base and balanced the tray on top. For a second Pem thought she was serving Hedai some food. But an odd meal it would be. There were no plates, no water, no bread. Hedai, in the meantime, did not budge. A statue of salt. The last thing Pem saw was a cauldron being brought in. Dying to know what was inside, she took a chance. I'm not feeling well. My throat is sore. Perhaps I should stay at home. The woman shook her head. Your father's orders. Nobody stays in the house. They went to a neighbor's and wove carpets all day. They knew the pattern by heart. Robin egg blue, Persian rose, periwinkle, cinnamon brown. Pem loved making colors. Red from henna, yellow from turmeric, brown from crushed walnut shells. As she soaked yarn in a bowl of honeydew, she confided in her twin. What do you mean she served her an empty cauldron? Asked Jamila, her eyes wide open. I swear she did, whispered Pem. Perhaps it wasn't empty. But it was peculiar. If there had been food inside, I would have seen steam, right? Or smelled something. Nothing. Go back to work, said Jamila, because she didn't know what else to say. In the afternoon they swapped places. This time Pem let Jamila prepare the dye while she wove. It was tiring. The muscles behind her eyes hurt, and her fingertips were sore. Parts of her body that she never thought about began to ache. Secretly, Pem included a motif in her carpet that wasn't part of the intended pattern. If anyone noticed it, and she was sure someone would, they would get upset. But she couldn't help it. It was a tiny mark, an H, as a reminder of her sister's name. When the carpet was finished, it would be sold to a local merchant, who would then sell it to a bigger merchant. From there the carpet would be carried to a smart shop in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. A tourist couple in the city for a few days would notice it in the window. They would buy it, even though it would cost them dear. The carpet would then be transported to Paris, Amsterdam, or New York, wherever the couple lived, the letter H forever concealed, but forever alive all the same. At dusk the family returned home, the 7 sisters and their stepmother. As they neared the garden walls, a wave of nervousness surged through Pem's body. She broke into a run. She had a bad feeling, less dread than fury, a mounting rage against no one but herself for not having acted earlier. About what, she didn't know. It was she who found Hedai, her body limp like a rag doll, her neck broken, hanging from a brass hook in the ceiling, which had been used many times in the past for the hammocks in which babies were rocked to sleep. She had hanged herself with the rope served to her in the cauldron. Asterisk. The cowboy named Bad tried to smile, as a noose was pulled tightly around his neck. You're joking, Blondie, he said, his voice breaking. You wouldn't play a joke on me like that. Blondie squinted, and with a tilt of his head answered, it's no joke. It's a rope, to go. Clamping her lips tightly, Pem realized she could not watch these scenes She half stood up. I go now. What? But why, my love? Elias asked. Why are you leaving early? Today? Yes, no. I go now. Is it because of the film? You didn't like it? No. Yes. I'm sorry. Shall I come with you? You stay, please. With that, Pem rose to her feet, leaving him without any explanation. As she walked hastily towards the exit and passed by the rows at the back, the person sitting there rubbed his temples to hide his face with his hands. When the film was over and the lights went back on, Elias stood up with everyone else. He didn't know what to make of Pem's sudden departure. He trudged to the foyer, his heart aching. Someone tapped him on his shoulder. Excuse me, do you have a light? A young lad, a teenager. Too young to be smoking. But it was none of his business to tell him that, and even if he did, he knew the boy wouldn't listen. Sorry, I don't smoke, Elias said. Really? There was something in the teenager's stare and such awkwardness in his remark that Elias flinched. But before he could say another word, the boy gave a slight nod and said, his tone hard and level, well, have a good one. Thanks. You too. Leaving the boy there, still watching him, Elias walked out through the double doors, his coat brushing the gray threads that Pem had left there only an hour ago.